Chapter 112. The cheers were very loud. However, the referee elder had clearly heard what Li Zongjio had just said. However, the referee elder did not believe Chu Feng at all. He did not dare to believe his eyes. No, he could not believe his own ears. Although he had heard it clearly, the referee elder still asked again to confirm that Li Zongjio had not said anything wrong. Perhaps he was too excited and had blurted out those words. I said, I want to challenge the elder. Li Zongjio repeated himself. Challenge the elder. Li Zongjio was actually planning to challenge the elder. It had been many years since a disciple had challenged an elder. Even if they had won, they knew that there was a huge gap between them and the elder. The fact that Mo Chu was able to break through to the Yuan general level while he was still a disciple was indeed something to be proud of. If Mo Chu were to win, he would perhaps issue a challenge and exchange blows with the elder in order to gain some experience. The elder would often act as though he was imparting knowledge to the elder. To them, defeating a disciple wasn't something they could brag about. Instead, they hoped that a few talents would emerge from the disciples below. However, judging from Li Zongjio's imposing manner, it was obvious that he was here to defeat the elder. For a time, the elders of the two main peaks who were fighting were also interested. This brat was really a little arrogant. A mere disciple from Long Herb Peak had defeated disciples from Blazing Peak and Crimson Afterglow Peak. Now, he had actually dared to challenge their elder. It was indeed as though he was looking for trouble. He actually wants to challenge the elder. Yang Hongyu was helped up by junior brother Tong. When he heard Li Zongjio's words, even Yang Hongyu was taken aback. He looked at Li Zongjio in disbelief. However, it made sense. The gap between him and Li Zongjio was too huge. Even after exchanging blows, he could not see through Li Zongjio's strength. This was Li Zongjio's strength. It was not something that ordinary people could see through. Therefore, it was reasonable for Li Zongjio to issue a challenge. This was because no one could tell how strong Li Zongjio was until now. Interesting. I think Qin Lai must be very unconvinced. Why don't we let him go up? Chu Aoran said. Qin Lai was the great elder of Blazing Peak. Blazing Peak had painstakingly nurtured a disciple of the Yuan general level, but he was inexplicably beaten to 4th place. Although this was due to the rules of the competition, losing to Li Zongjio was still very shocking. Where did this Li Zongjio come from? He had actually defeated the genius that Blazing Peak had painstakingly nurtured. How could they tolerate this? Very well. Since you want to challenge an elder, then I, Qin Lai, will have to take action. Qin Lai was already eager to give it a try. At the same time, he used his gaze to warn the elder of Crimson Afterglow Peak and the others not to take action and steal his job. The elder of Crimson Afterglow Peak could not wait for Qin Lai to take action. This was not a good task. If he won, then he won. If he lost or embarrassed himself in the arena, then how would he look at the reputation of an elder in the future? Would others still call him an elder in the future? Let's wait for a good show. Those at the elder level were also whispering to each other. Have you really decided? The referee elder said in a deep voice. Li Zongjio also nodded. What a joke. If he did not challenge this elder, then how would he be able to stay in the Fog Snow Valley for 7 days? One had to know that the spiritual energy in the last 3 days was the most vigorous and the densest. In fact, it was more than 10 times the spiritual energy of the previous 4 days. Long Herb Peak's Li Zongjio, as the champion of this summit, I challenge. Is there any elder who is willing to spar with me? Immediately, the elder turned around and shouted towards the huge square. All the disciples were listening in silence. At the same time, they were secretly guessing which elder's guild had made a move. This had piqued their curiosity. I'll do it. Just as the referee elder's voice faded away, a voice as loud as a leopard's resounded. The sound was like thunder, rolling and rolling in the sky above the Crimson Afterglow Peak. If the enemy encountered such a situation, they would have been scared out of their wits by this sound since they couldn't tell what was real and what was false. Shameless. This elder is really thick-skinned. Bah, he's obviously targeting senior brother Li. The disciples of Long Herb Peak started to ridicule. because the one who spoke was the great elder of Blazing Peak. Qin Lai stood up. First, he cupped his hands towards the sect master and the others. Then with a leap he landed on the arena. Although he was about the same height as Li Zongjio, the arrogance in his eyes gave people a feeling of superiority. Looking at Li Zongjio before him, it was as if he was looking at an ant. Li Zongjio, I'm Blazing Peak's great elder, Qin Lai. Since you've issued a challenge, if you can withstand 10 of my moves, I'll consider it your victory. Qin Lai said proudly. His words caused the crowd to sigh. This was too much of a bully. It was not the first time someone challenged an elder. However, it was usually an ordinary elder who stepped up. Qin Lai was the great elder of Blazing Peak. It was a waste of talent for him to step up personally. Moreover, everyone could see that Qin Lai was here to teach Li Zongjio a lesson. No need, no need. We'll follow the rules. Li Zongjio waved his hand and said. His words seemed to be very polite. However, the content of his words was to show Qin Lai who was in charge. When Li Zongjio said that there was no need, he meant that there was no need for the agreement of 10 moves. He would only be considered a winner if he defeated him. As his disciple, Qin Lai would not take advantage of him. Qin Lai's eyes widened in anger when he heard this. He was about to spit fire. Good. You've got guts. I like such a gutsy disciple. If you can defeat me today, I'll give you my elder position. Qin Lai said proudly. As an elder with a bad temper, it was not strange for him to say such words. In fact, Qin Lai was a man of his words. He was just that straightforward. The judge was an elder of Crimson Afterglow Peak. Now that he saw Qin Lai and the Long Herb Peak's disciple face to face, he could not say anything. After all, Qin Lai was the great elder of Blazing Peak. This Qin Lai is really hot-tempered. Chu Aoran said. Qin Lai was hot-tempered, but he was straightforward. He was also loyal to the sect. Although he was hot-tempered, Chu Aoran still admired him. Elder, you're too polite. Li Zongjio cupped his hands and said. Qin Lai was stunned. At first, he didn't know what Li Zongjio meant by being polite. Later on, when he thought about it, he realized that the courtesy Li Zongjio was referring to was him taking the initiative to give up the position of elder to him. How arrogant! Chapter 113. This wasn't the first time someone had challenged an elder. However, Li Zongjio's challenge this time was definitely the most unruly one. It was as if he was treating this elder as an equal, and not his own elder. Qin Lai was an elder of Lai Peak. Naturally, his strength was remarkable. Just his cultivation alone was already at the level of a grade 5 prime general. With this strength, he could be a vanguard general at the border. It was very difficult to break through and improve at the prime general level. Gu Xuanwu was proof of this. To be selected into the Xuanwu army, it was enough to see how strong and talented Gu Xuanwu was. But now, he was already in his 60s. In the end, he was still at the level of a grade 2 prime general. At Qin Lai's age, a grade 5 prime general was already very good. Ha! Qin Lai released all the energy in his body. This was a good opportunity to announce the strength of his sect to the disciples and leave a deep impression on them. Normally, these elders rarely made a move, and sometimes they were a little strict. These disciples were dissatisfied. Today, I'll show you what true strength is. Boom! A terrifying aura was released. Qin Lai's entire body emitted a dense fluctuation of origin energy, causing everyone to be shocked. At this moment, Qin Lai stood on the arena like a towering, unmoving mountain of flames. The kind of mountain of flames that could explode at the slightest touch. Li Zongjio lifted his head, looking at Qin Lai in front of him. That tyrannical elemental energy was unleashed, and the entire arena was filled with a terrifying aura. All of it belonged to Qin Lai's fire elemental energy. Li Zongjio's clothes swayed along with it, and when he touched them, Li Zongjio found that they were already burning hot. If the power was just a little bit stronger, Li Zongjio's clothes would probably be burned off. Not bad. Li Zongjio didn't let his guard down. Although he was confident, Qin Lai was still the strongest opponent Li Zongjio had ever met. The golden-winged blue-tailed eagle was guarding the Li family. Otherwise, the golden-winged blue-tailed eagle would have been enough to turn Qin Lai into a cripple. The green light sword in his hand trembled slightly. Li Zongjio didn't hesitate and charged towards Qin Lai. In the face of such an expert, other than a head-on confrontation, if one wanted to use any other tricks in this kind of martial arts competition, one would only be thrown off the stage. Seeing that Li Zongjio was actually running directly towards him, Qin Lai was also very appreciative. With his temper, he liked it when his opponent charged at him. This kind of direct confrontation was the embodiment of a man. Come! Qin Lai let out a low roar. Even when facing a disciple who was weaker than him, or even a disciple who was only at the first grade of the Yuan Master Realm, he did not relax. There was a reason why Li Zongjio was able to win until the end. It was definitely not due to luck. Whoosh! The green light sword in Li Zongjio's hand left his hand and turned into a flying sword, stabbing towards Qin Lai. The origin energy defense that Qin Lai released didn't interfere with the direction and strength of the flying sword. With a boom, it flew towards Qin Lai. Blazing fist! Qin Lai was even more direct. Facing the green light sword that had the power to break blood, he clenched his fist and chopped the white stone in front of him. Boom! The blazing aura sent the green light sword flying. This sword is not bad. What other moves do you have? Just use them. Qin Lai's fist was so domineering that people couldn't help but be dazed. Facing such domineering power, how could there be any chance of victory? It would be wonderful if they weren't beaten into meat paste. When Qin Lai knocked away Li Zongjio's green light sword, he discovered that Li Zongjio's figure had already disappeared. The powerful aura instantly captured Li Zongjio's figure. Unknowingly, Li Zongjio had already run behind him. Unfortunately, although Li Zongjio's speed was fast, he still couldn't hide in front of a Yuan general. Experts at the Yuan general level were so powerful that they could release their Yuan Qi and form an absolute Yuan Qi field around them. Under this Yuan Qi field, they could control everything around them. Therefore, no matter where an attack came from, they would be able to capture it. You couldn't escape his eyes at all. Boom! Qin Lai's fist swept across. With this punch, the aura around him was instantly destroyed. His fist smashed towards Li Zongjio in a crushing manner. A powerful aura condensed. Everyone could clearly see that Li Zongjio's figure was instantly suppressed by the aura formed by Qin Lai's fist. It was indeed the difference between realms. Even if you were smart and had more tricks up your sleeve, your origin energy wouldn't be able to withstand it if your realm wasn't high enough. Thus, you would only end up being crushed. However, Li Zongjio's figure instantly disappeared. An afterimage? The ray of light disappeared in front of his eyes. Li Zongjio's figure instantly disappeared. Seeing this scene, Qin Lai was also stunned. This Li Zongjio had actually used an afterimage to deceive him. Then what about his real body? In the next second, Qin Lai turned around and immediately felt a terrifying blood fiend energy coming from behind him. The blood energy behind him roiled as if he had entered hell. Such a shocking aura caused Qin Lai's figure to freeze on the spot. Blood-extinguishing palm. Li Zongjio mobilized the Blood Dragon Origin Spirit's power and poured it into his palms. This palm strike was filled with the power of death and destruction as it flew towards Qin Lai. Although Qin Lai noticed Li Zongjio's movement, it was already too late for him to block it. Even the elemental energy in his body was only enough to protect himself. Boom! Li Zongjio's palm hit Qin Lai's body. Qin Lai was instantly sent flying more than 20 meters away. However, during this process, Qin Lai's feet were firmly planted on the ground and did not let go. As a result, a long charred mark was left on the ground. However, after Li Zongjio's palm hit, it brought about a certain amount of trouble to himself. Qin Lai's origin energy fire seemed to have spread to Li Zongjio's body. At this moment, it was already entrenched around Li Zongjio's body. It seemed to want to melt Li Zongjio. This is bad. Qin Lai cultivates the creeping earth fire. Once he comes into contact with it, he will definitely be burned. The Long Herb Peak's elder immediately said. Hearing the elder's words, Lin Yao and the others became worried. What should we do now? He's dead for sure. Wang Bai slapped his thigh. Indeed, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Li Zongjio was entangled by the creeping earth fire. How could he get rid of it? However, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, Li Zongjio's entire body was burning with flames. However, he did not give in. Instead, he reached out a hand and circulated his origin energy, directly extinguishing the creeping earth fire bit by bit. Before that, Li Zongjio's body had already suffered many injuries. However, Li Zongjio did not move an inch and his expression did not change. Chapter 114. Third grade earth-creeping verdant flame? It's been refined into such trash by you? Li Zongjio shattered Qin Lai's earth-creeping flame. He said disdainfully. Wang Bai and the others seemed to have predicted this. This Li Zongjio seemed to often act pretentiously, always criticizing others for their incompetence. But most importantly, Li Zongjio's pretentiousness was on point. What did he mean by refined into such trash? His words couldn't be so simple and direct. Elder Qin Lai, as the peak master of Lai Peak, had cultivated this earth-creeping verdant flame art for at least 30 to 40 years. He naturally knew how to cultivate this elemental art. But now, in front of Li Zongjio, it seemed to be worthless. You're courting death. Qin Lai gritted his teeth in anger. It seemed that in front of Li Zongjio, the elemental art he cultivated was trash, dog shit. No, it wasn't his elemental art. It was that after he cultivated it, he was looked down upon by this Li Zongjio. This was looking down on his talent. The earth-creeping flame entangles endlessly. The green leaves of the verdant flame extend endlessly. This flame of yours has been refined into a dying candle by you, and you still have the face to display it in front of me? Li Zongjio took a step forward. By the time he finished speaking, Li Zongjio had already taken 10 steps forward. Shortening the distance by 10 steps, in the next moment, Li Zongjio's palm actually emitted a terrifying flame aura. This flame rose vertically into the air. The appearance it took was the earth-creeping flame that Qin Lai had used before. What? Qin Lai's eyes instantly widened. He had cultivated the earth-creeping verdant flame for a total of 43 years. It was only with his understanding of the elemental art that he was able to cultivate this earth-creeping flame. But Li Zongjio had never seen this elemental art before. He directly used his own elemental energy to condense this earth-creeping flame. Looking at the power of the earth-creeping flame, it seemed to be more flexible than Qin Lai's. Li Zongjio wasn't here to perform. He directly flung the earth-creeping flame out of his hand with a whoosh. Instantly, with a whistling sound, it directly wrapped around Qin Lai, who was still in shock. It wasn't that Qin Lai was useless. It was just that Qin Lai knew that with Li Zongjio's cultivation, the earth-creeping flame wouldn't pose any threat to him. Indeed, this earth-creeping flame only wrapped around his body. It was so weak that it could be easily shattered. Wait, this earth-creeping flame, actually, Qin Lai, earth-creeping flames, flame wood flames verdant flame was flame, flames verdant flame, flames woods flames flame. Earth-creeping flames, it's, to flames flame, it, flames, two's verdant flame. Between them, they actually started to grow once again. The more he fought, the more the earth-creeping flame grew. The exploding creeping earth fire once again wrapped around Qin Lai. Although its power was very weak, its advantage was that it grew and multiplied endlessly. It was very tiring. Damn it. Li Zongjio didn't stay idle under such circumstances. With a wave of his hand, the azure light sword actually returned to his hand. With the azure light sword in hand, Li Zongjio's figure quickly rushed forward. Ancient sword art, Nirvana empty valley. Li Zongjio's charging footsteps suddenly stopped, and the sword in his hand suddenly slashed out. At this moment, the azure light sword in his hand seemed to be blooming with endless radiance. It was obviously an ordinary profound grade weapon. But in the hands of Li Zongjio, it was like a peerless divine weapon. The terrifying sword aura spread out. Qin Lai was still fiddling with the earth-creeping flame in his hand because he seemed to have comprehended something just now. However, Li Zongjio's sword came at the right time. Qin Lai didn't want to interrupt this enlightenment. He could only stand on the spot and continue to comprehend the power of the earth-creeping flame that Li Zongjio used. Qin Lai stood on the spot. Qin Lai stood at his original spot, his entire body entangled by the creeping earth fire. Then he was hit by Li Zongjio's sword. This sword had the power to sweep away thousands of troops. Qin Lai's protective origin energy was released. This was his origin energy's automatic reaction when it sensed an external threat. What Li Zongjio wanted to destroy was this aura. Destroy! Boom! The sword aura whistled and swallowed Qin Lai in an instant. Then, Qin Lai's figure was directly thrown out. This sword seemed to have set off a hurricane in the arena. Qin Lai's protective origin energy was automatically shattered. Bang! Qin Lai's body was blasted out. He fell to the ground. The entire arena was in an uproar. No one expected that Elder Qin Lai would fall to the ground as if he was cursed. Moreover, he fell out of the arena. Li Zongjio had easily won. What was he doing? He didn't even have the slightest bit of defense. Elder Qin Lai had already been defeated. When Qin Lai was sent flying, he was stunned. Everyone was shocked. Even the referee elders widened their eyes in shock. They were worried that Qin Lai would beat Li Zongjio half to death, so they gathered a few more people to help mediate the fight. However, the current situation was something that they could not believe no matter how hard they tried. Li Zongjio, an ordinary disciple from Longherb Peak, had joined the sect for less than half a year. They had never heard of this person before. He won just like that? Could it be that this was Qin Lai's scheme? Qin Lai obviously didn't want to continue holding the position of Great Elder, so he deliberately agreed to such a battle and then pretended to lose by accident. Using such a method was simply too despicable. It was despicable just thinking about it. However, Qin Lai had already lost the battle. Why was there no movement? This was completely different from his style. The few people looked at each other. When they wanted to go over and take a look, they saw Qin Lai suddenly turn over and sit up. Then he looked up and laughed loudly. I understand. I finally understand. No wonder I couldn't break through my realm after so long. I went in the wrong direction. Qin Lai laughed out loud. Then he looked at his surroundings and realized that he had already fallen to the ground. He was immediately stunned. He scratched his head, then jumped and landed directly in front of Li Zongjio. Elder Qin Lai. Elder Qin Lai. The few of them immediately became nervous. Could it be that this elder Li Zongjio wanted to silence them? Since they had lost to Li Zongjio, they naturally had to kill them. Only then would they be able to protect their reputation. However, they saw the most shocking scene in their lives. They saw Qin Lai bowing to Li Zongjio. He was actually bowing to Li Zongjio. I admit defeat in this battle. From now on, you will be the great elder of Fierce Peak. I, Qin Lai, am willing to give up my position. The moment these words came out, the crowd went into an uproar. Chapter 115. What was wrong with Li Zongjio? To think that he could actually force the first elder of Lai Peak to lower his head and admit defeat. Such strength was definitely not a joke. Who knew what the first elder had gone through? The people of Long Medicine Peak were in an uproar. Fuck, this is too exciting. A disciple of Long Medicine Peak is going to be poached to become the first elder. Senior Brother Li is from Long Medicine Peak. How can they take him away? Senior Brother Li, don't go. While Long Medicine Peak was in an uproar, Ru Peak on the other side was in an even greater uproar. What was going on? Their great elder was actually going to be a brat who was still wet behind the ears and whose hair had not even fully grown yet. Wasn't this, if this was leaked out? The people of Long Medicine Peak would be able to suppress Ru Peak for a lifetime. Just as these people were about to explode from anxiety, Chuaran, who was on the spectator stand, had a few more voices beside him. How could he be so reckless? To become an elder of the sect, one had to go through many rounds of selection and assessment. However, since Qin Lai had said such words, this meant that Qin Lai had already learned about Li Zongjio's special abilities. It was this ability that gave him the confidence to acknowledge Li Zongjio's position. Otherwise, Li Zongjio's victory would not have convinced Qin Lai. Qin Lai was now very convinced of Li Zongjiu's strength. Let's wait and see. There's no hurry, Chu Oren said with a smile as he tried to persuade the anxious peak master of Ru Peak. Of course, Lin Song was also very worried. It would be terrible if Li Zongjiu went over directly. Long Medicine Peak was waiting for such a disciple to appear. He was going to make Long Medicine Peak famous. From then on, no one in the sect would dare to say that Long Medicine Peak only knew how to refine pills. If they did not produce a few experts, these people would not know how powerful Long Medicine Peak was. Lin Song had promised Li Zongjiu so many benefits to the Li family in order to tie him down. This was clearly a show of goodwill. You don't have to be an elder. Just send your monthly salary to my residence, Li Zongjiu said with his hands behind his back. These words were said without the slightest trace of politeness. He just wanted to show an image of keeping his promise, but it was a bit too much for you to take advantage of him like this. Some of the Blazing Peak disciples looked at Li Zongjiu with displeasure. Just now, Li Zongjiu had used some kind of demonic technique to knock their great elder out of the arena. Anyone could see that if they were to fight head-on, Li Zongjiu would not be able to shake Qin Lai at all. Unexpectedly, not only was Qin Lai not angry at all, he even happily nodded his head in agreement. Of course. Qin Lai knew. The insights that Li Zongjiu had just imparted to Qin Lai could be said to have given him a second life. Such benefits were not something that could be casually exchanged for with worldly wealth. He had been stuck at the level of a grade 5 origin general for a very long time. He could not break through for a long time. This had troubled Qin Lai for a long time, but after comprehending the knowledge that Li Zongjiu had imparted to him, he understood. He immediately understood. His next cultivation method could also ensure that he could break through the limits that had been restricting him all this while. He had already found the breakthrough point and was just waiting for him to accumulate strength. Therefore, this little bit of money was worth it. It was far from enough. Kid, how dare you humiliate our great elder? I want to fight you one-on-one. Brothers, let's drag this brat down and give him a good beating. Kill him. For example, the disciples of Lai Peak were clamoring as if they were going to revolt. At this moment, a figure descended from the sky and naturally attracted everyone's attention. The originally angry and explosive emotions gradually calmed down. Everyone's doubts about the competition were temporarily put aside. This was because the person who had appeared was the sect leader, Chu Oren. When Li Zongjiu saw Chu Oren, his heart skipped a beat and he bowed. Although he was the evil lord in his previous life, he was still a disciple of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect. When he saw the sect leader, he naturally had to bow. This was a basic courtesy. Long Herb Peak disciple Li Zongjiu will be the guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect from today onwards. Li Zongjiu, are you willing? Guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect. This was the most special position in the system of the sect. The so-called guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect was still responsible for protecting the sect's safety and honor. However, there was a special point. The guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect would only be needed when the sect was in a life and death situation. This was equivalent to the supreme elder before he retired. If even the guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect could not handle it, the supreme elder would personally take action. What? This kid is actually going to be conferred the title of guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect by the sect leader himself. Damn it. What? Guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect. That's not the highest level of guardian. Even the great elder can't control them. Only the sect leader can summon them. The treatment is also the highest in the sect. This Li Zongjiu is really lucky. Li Zongjiu was shocked. He did not expect that Chu Aoren would appear to give him such a position. It had to be said that this was the position that Li Zongjiu was most satisfied with. In his previous life, Li Zongjiu did not spend much time in the Fog Snow Alchemy sect. What he experienced was extremely dark and he did not have many friends. Therefore, Li Zongjiu planned to leave the Fog Snow Alchemy sect directly after going to the Fog Snow Valley. However, Chu Oren had now extended an olive branch. Furthermore, the guardian of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect was also a very easy position. Normally, he would not need to use it at all. It was much better than the position of an elder. Normally, he would have to deal with some messy affairs. Moreover, this guardian of the fog snow alchemy sect could also be used by Li Zongjio in the early stages. This way, it would be more beneficial and convenient for the family. Okay, I'll agree for the time being. Li Zongjio said after thinking for a while. For the time being, he agreed. Even Chu Eoren stared at Li Zongjio in shock. Li Zongjio's tone was extremely arrogant. To be able to resist such a great temptation and say such words, it seemed that the position of guardian of the fog snow alchemy sect was not very attractive to him. However, Chu Eoren was not curious about Li Zongjio's secret and his arrogance. As long as Li Zongjio was loyal to the sect, there would be no problem. This is the order of Guardian Changwu. When the sect is in a life and death situation, Guardian Changwu must appear. Chu Eoren handed Li Zongjio a platinum token. After Li Zongjio took it, Chu Eoren clapped his hands. At the side, Qin Lai also took the lead in applauding. Soon, all of the disciples began to applaud. Guardian Changwu was the last line of defense of the sect. For Guardians Changwu, they only needed to appear when the sect was in a life and death situation. However, for these ordinary disciples, the purpose of these Guardians Changwu's life was to protect the sect. It was also because of these powerful and mysterious guardians. They ensured the absolute safety of the fog snow alchemy sect. The applause was thunderous. Chapter 116. After this year's peak test, just Li Zongjio's limelight was enough to overshadow everyone else's performance. There were 15 people in the top 5 from the 3 main peaks. Excluding Li Zongjio, there were 14 people left. However, Li Zongjio was the only one who had the most topics to talk about among the 14 people. This made it even more awkward. In fact, the topic of everyone's private conversations was all about Li Zongjio. Something worth mentioning. On the day of the peak test, in the clinic, Mo Chu woke up from his coma and had a bad premonition. When he heard that he was ranked 4th, he almost wanted to die. However, when Mo Chu heard the following words and found out that Li Zong had actually defeated the first elder of the Ardent Peak, he almost spat out a mouthful of fresh blood from his chest. However, he held it in. What did you say? You said that damn Li Zongjio became Protector Changwu. When he heard the news, Mo Chu, who was strong, could not hold it in anymore. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell unconscious on the bed. This blow was too big for Mo Chu, because Mo Chu had hoped that he could become Protector Changwu. Later on, he thought that he might as well run for the position of Sect Master. However, Li Zongjio had become the Protector of Changwu. Even if Mo Chu became the next Sect Master candidate, he would still be a level lower than Li Zongjio. For Li Zongjio, Protector Changwu was just taking advantage of the situation. It was normal for him to add some benefits to the family in the future, even if Li Zongjio did not take the initiative to ask for some benefits. Some people in the Fog Snow Alchemy sect would try to curry favor with the Li family. Although Protector Changwu didn't usually say this, his words carried a lot of weight. Li Zongjio was more concerned about the opening of the Fog Snow Valley. It just so happened that on the second day of the peak trials, they were the disciples who were going to enter the Fog Snow Valley. In front of Fog Snow Valley, there were 2 people standing beside Li Zongjio. Ma Zhao was a lucky bastard. Therefore, he was qualified to enter the Fog Snow Valley. They also received their own reward, a high-grade level 2 pill. Turtle Essence Condensing Pill. This pill was refined by Lin Song. Li Zongjio had already seen this pill before and he was extremely familiar with its refinement technique. It was no wonder that he could become the peak master of Long Medicine Peak. With such a face and many skills, it would not be difficult for the current Lin Song to refine a grade 3 pill. Standing beside Li Zongjio, Yang Hongyu, Ma Zhao, and the others couldn't help but feel restrained. The 3 peak masters went to open the restriction in front of the Fog Snow Valley. After the 3 of you enter, find a place to cultivate the Yuan formula yourselves. Remember, don't be too hasty. This Turtle Essence Condensing Pill has the effect of concentrating one's spirit. It can help you increase your concentration and increase the refining of the Yuan Qi. However, it can only last for a day. You have to make the best use of it. Lin Sung explained. The restriction was opened. In the Fog Snow Valley, a strong yuan qi immediately filled the air. Some yuan qi filled the air. Everyone felt energized. Li Zongjio did not say anything and took the lead to enter. This turtle essence condensing pill was obviously not enough. When Li Zongjio entered, Yang Hongyu and Ma Zhao also followed behind him. The three peak masters. They also closed the restriction again and waited for 3 days to open it again. This ensured that the yuan qi inside would not be too exhausted and dissipated. The space in the valley was not too big. It was about 20 to 30 feet wide and was surrounded by cliffs that were hundreds of feet high. Fortunately, the lighting here was good and very transparent. It looked like a deep well. This was the second time Yang Hongyu came to the Fog Snow Valley. Last year, he also came to the Fog Snow Valley as the second place. This is the Fog Snow Valley. Senior brother, the yuan qi here is at least 10 times richer than outside. Ma Zhao said excitedly. Just then he saw Li Zongjio stop. Yang Hongyu's heart jumped. He rolled his eyes and immediately took out his turtle essence condensing pill and handed it over. Lord Protector, I'm not in a hurry to make a breakthrough. The Fog Snow Valley opens once a year. This turtle essence condensing pill is just right for me to use. Protector Li, please accept it. Yang Hongyu was a wily old fox in the sect. It was no wonder that he had cultivated for a longer time. He immediately saw through Li Zongjio's intention. In fact, Li Zongjio was about to open his mouth and rob him. However, Yang Hongyu's initiative made Li Zongjio feel a little embarrassed. You're quite tactful, Li Zongjio said. Then he took the turtle essence condensing pill. He looked at Ma Zhao. Yang Hongyu also looked at Ma Zhao. Ma Zhao was stunned at first. Then he quickly came to his senses. He quickly offered his pill as a tribute. Li Zongjio accepted it all. Anyway, it would be a waste for these people to take the pill. With their level, they couldn't refine it at all. But you guys go find your own place, Li Zongjio said. Then he swaggered and sat in the center of the room. The closer he got to the center, the stronger the yuan qi was. Seeing Li Zongjio sitting in the center, Yang Hongyu and Ma Zhao consciously moved to the side. To be able to have such a deterrent force, it was a display of strength. Just when Li Zongjio was cultivating in the Fog Snow Valley. In the Luoxia city, there were also a lot of new things happening. First, the Bai family and the Li family both sent people to occupy a part of the Huangyuan, Oregon. They also swaggered and opened a store in the Flying Cloud City. They also wantonly recruited miners and gave them great benefits to mine the Huangyuan, Oregon. The main business was also handed over to the Bai family. In the first 2 days of recruiting, there was a lot of bloodshed. Although some forces in the city were afraid of the golden-winged blue-tailed eagle and the reputation of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect, they didn't dare to act rashly. However, some mountain bandits wouldn't hold back in the slightest when they made their move. The Huangyuan or vein was in the mountain. If one wanted to pass by, he must first pay the toll, which was the so-called protection fee. If paying could solve the problem, it was still possible. However, people were always greedy. Therefore, they must use knives and blood to let these people know that money was not an option. Since the Li family had a relationship with the Longherb Peak, they might as well expand. The Bai family came up with the idea to hang the Fog Snow Alchemy sect as the external family. Since they were bound to the Fog Snow Alchemy sect, those who wanted to attack naturally had to restrain themselves and think more carefully. Outside the Huangyuan, Oregon, more than 10 sharp logs were inserted into the ground. There was also a head on each of these logs. There was a buzzing sound on it. Some flies and mosquitoes also stayed on it, taking root and nesting. Elder Bai Cheng of the Bai family was wearing the uniform of the Bai family. Behind him was a group of Bai family guards and some mercenaries who had just been recruited from the Flying Cloud City. These people only cared about money and not people. The Bai family controlled the Huangyuan, so the income was not ordinary. Therefore, it wasn't a problem for them to recruit some Yuan general-level experts. Now that the Bai family's forces had just arrived, they naturally had to patrol well to prevent the invasion of the weak. As for the heads that were strung on the wood, If there were people from the underworld, they would definitely be able to recognize them. The first head that was strung on the wood belonged to one of the top 10 bandit leaders in the vicinity, Big Teeth Huang. Chapter 117. Outside the mine. In one of the tents, Bai Luoxue was wearing casual clothes and holding a blueprint in her hand. It was the structural blueprint of the yellow ore. Last night, Bai Luoxue specially invited some grave robbers through some special channels. These people were proficient in geography, so the yellow ore could not be hidden from their eyes. From their point of view, there seemed to be something beneath the yellow ore. The way we are digging now is wrong. Even if we continue to build the bone beams, this place will collapse in half a month if we continue to dig deeper. According to the results of my friend's survey, if we dig in the opposite direction and make a passage from this side of the mountain, we will most likely find the thing hidden under the yellow ore. Thing? What is it? The person who spoke. It was the elder of the Li family, Li Xuan. Li Xuelan had a high status in the Li family. At the same time, she was Li Tianqing's elder sister and Li Zongjio's aunt. It was impossible to get Li Xuelan to step forward for ordinary matters. However, too many things had happened recently. The Li family had changed too much, and they were seriously short of manpower. There was even a feeling that there were many things waiting to be done. Therefore, Li Xuelan personally came to oversee the yellow ore. After all, this was a huge industry and an important resource mine. In a sense, the Bai family had become the subordinate of the Li family. However, they were still disloyal, so they had to be watched carefully. Only when the future cooperation gradually stabilized could they be at ease. According to speculation, there is another mine under the yellow ore. However, we need more accurate exploration to know what kind of mine it is. Bai Luoxue said. Is what you said true? Li Xuelan's eyes darkened, as if she was using a serious expression to tell Bai Luoxue that if what she said was false, the consequences would be severe. Of course. Then, Li Xuelan looked at the blueprint in her hand. She frowned immediately. If we dig from here, we will enter the sphere of influence of the 3 bandit groups. If the 3 bandit groups know about it, they will definitely join in. Li Xuelan said. If the 3 horse bandit groups knew about this, if the entrance of this mineral vein turned out to be within their sphere of influence, then this matter would be very serious. It would not be a matter of collecting protection fees, but a matter of taking it for themselves. Therefore, they must not know about it. What's your plan? Li Xuelan looked at Bai Luoxue and said. This young man's courage in making decisions far exceeded Bai Wuheng's. However, Bai Luoxue had always considered only one direction, and that was under the situation of absolute victory. She had never considered the situation of defeat. One word. Bai Luoxue said indifferently. Since they're blocking my path to wealth, I'll just have to kill them all. I'll carve out a path of blood so that these people can learn a thing or two. You won't be able to stop me on this path. This tent was filled with Bai Luoxue's murderous aura. Li Xuelan had misjudged this imposing aura that shot into the sky. She was young, but she was decisive in killing. With such courage, she would definitely become a figure in the future. Such a person must be on her side. If she was on the enemy's side, then it would be a huge disaster. The Li family was currently on a bloody path of rise. Although Li Tianqing was in charge of the Li family, he did not relax in the slightest. Practicing the Heavenly Blaze Lion King art copied by Li Zongjio, Li Tianqing had made considerable progress. Today, he had made a breakthrough and would like to exchange a few moves with Gu Xuanwu. After a round of fighting, both of them were exhausted and panting like oxen. When Li Tianqing used this set of elemental arts, his elemental energy was as ferocious as a tiger. Although Gu Xuanwu was more experienced, his fists were afraid of the young and strong. For a moment, it was difficult for him to resist Li Tianqing's fists. This set of elemental arts of yours is definitely not limited to the 3rd grade. While panting, Gu Xuanwu sat on a rattan chair, wearing a sweat-soaked white singlet and waving a palm leaf fan in his hand. He said to Li Tianqing. Li Tianqing also continuously poured tea into his mouth. In the process of cultivation, Li Tianqing also discovered the exquisiteness of this elemental art. It was so different from the fire lion art in his family. It was really too terrifying. In the process of cultivating this elemental art, he could clearly feel the energy permeating around his body. He could absorb it at any time. Moreover, what this elemental art described was absolutely terrifyingly detailed in penetrating one's own energy. As a result, Li Tianqing had a better understanding of his body over the past few days. It was no wonder that some experts seemed to know more than others. It was because their levels were different. I think so too. However, this elemental art is only enough to cultivate to the Yuan general level. It is probably incomplete. Li Tianqing said. Now, the Li family is already invincible in the Sunset City. How far do you want to go before you are willing to stop? Gu Xuanwu sighed and asked. Now that he was old, he had already passed the age of fighting and killing. If Gu Xuanwu was still young, then his drive would definitely be stronger than Li Tianqing's. However, this person was most afraid of endless greed. If there was only greed, then he could still control it. However, if there was no end to it, then he would fall into the abyss. Isn't the reason why we are fighting so hard to seek stability? Let's take one step at a time. Li Tianqing said. With his current vision, he could now see the Sunset City, the land of the 13 provinces under the Xingyan dynasty. In the Dingquan province, there were more than 7 first-class cities, and there was even a provincial city. Below them, there were already more than 30 second-grade cities similar to Northern Medicine City. And there were more than 100 third-class cities similar to the Flying Cloud City. There were even more small cities like Sunset City that weren't ranked in the first place. As for how far he could go, that would depend on where his vision could be set. Within 1,000 miles, the leading force was the Fog Snow Pill sect. At the very least, his Li family also had to walk out of the shadow of the Fog Snow Pill sect. Li Tianqing thought in his heart. He was not like Li Zongjio, who was reborn. If he knew, Li Zongjio wanted to build the Li family into an aristocratic family with 1,000 years of inheritance. The power of the family would be on equal footing with the imperial family of the dynasty. In fact, in some aspects, they were even more superior than the members of the royal family. He would definitely shout that he was crazy. Even if Li Zongjio was his son, he would think that Li Zongjio was crazy. Chapter 118. 3 days later, the restriction of the Fog Snow Valley was activated again. At this moment, there were already 10 elders waiting to enter the valley. Ma Zhao and Yang Hongyu, who had just come out, also walked out obediently. Li Zongjio naturally stayed inside. As the Fog Snow Pill sect's guardian Changwu, these people couldn't do anything to him even if he stayed inside. Greetings, elders. Guardian Li is still cultivating inside. Yang Hongyu bowed to the elders in front of him. Guardian Li. When this person was mentioned, the elders felt awkward. However, there was one person who didn't feel awkward, and that was Qin Lai. There were only 10 elders who could enter the Fog Snow Valley, and they were selected based on their usual contributions. Therefore, Qin Lai naturally came to this place. Li Zongjio was only in his teens, but his status in the sect was even higher than theirs. Therefore, it was an awkward situation. In fact, when they saw Li Zongjio, they had to address him as Protector Li. Later, they would pretend that they didn't see Li Zongjio. The 10 elders entered the Fog Snow Valley one after another. Because the Fog Snow Valley itself was limited in size, it could only accommodate so many people. Of course, the Snow Mist Valley was full of Yuan Qi. If he used this state to assist his cultivation in the early stages, there would be a lot of benefits. However, in the later stages, for example, at Sect Master Chu Aoran's level, this mere abundance of essence energy would not be of much use. It was more about one's own hard work and the absorption of elixirs. Just one pill from him was equivalent to more than 10 years of cultivation. How long would it take for him to catch up with such a gap? Therefore, the strong would become stronger, and the weak would become weaker. Those who didn't know the method would always struggle on this path. When these elders saw Li Zongjio sitting in the most central position, some of them were unhappy. For example, the Crimson Afterglow Peak's great elder Yen Beihan's face was as cold as ice. Even though Li Zongjio had become Protector Changwu, they had nothing to say. After all, Li Zongjio had greater potential than them. However, they still needed to know the seniority. These elders had been working hard in the sect for a long time. They had been working hard for the sect for a long time. Based on their contributions, it was enough for them to receive enough respect in the sect. However, Li Zongjio didn't seem to realize this at all. On the path of cultivation, there was only life and death. There was no courtesy. Li Zongjio really doesn't know how to be polite. Yen Beihan muttered under his breath. Seeing that Qin Lai had also moved to the side, Yen Beihan went to sit on a praying mat that was slightly further away from Qin Lai. There were only 4 days left. On the 6th day, the Yuan Qi in the fog snow valley would surge violently. When this surge of Yuan Qi washed over, it would be a good opportunity for a breakthrough. This was because the pressure from the outside world, coupled with one's own control, could very well break through a boundary that one had not been able to break through for a long time. Li Zongjio didn't feel the change in the crowd around him. At this moment, he had entered an extremely crucial moment. Although the surrounding Yuan Qi was rather dense, Li Zongjio also felt that the fog snow valley was truly beneficial for the cultivation of mind power while he cultivated the white god Fu. Before cultivating the white god Fu, Li Zongjio's mind power had been condensed based on his own experience. Now that he had cultivated the white god Fu, Li Zongjio had completely consolidated his mind power according to the top-notch mind power cultivation method of the White Dragon clan. Li Zongjio was currently in the middle of cultivating the first level of the white god Fu, which was the most basic and also the most important stage. Place the white piece. At this moment, Li Zongjio's mind power was like a vast whirlpool, causing the surrounding energy to churn and churn. In the end, the whirlpool formed a white stone at the end of the whirlpool. This was the final realm of the first level. The white piece was placed. At this moment, Li Zongjio's mental energy turned into a white chess piece and landed in his mind. As a result, Li Zongjio's cultivation of the white god Fu had officially entered the first level. The first level of the white god Fu. Given my current mind power, it should be comparable to the intermediate second level. Li Zongjio thought to himself. If he activated the support of the White Dragon origin spirit, Li Zongjio's mind power would become even more terrifying. However, his Yuan Qi cultivation was still holding him back. Give me a turtle energy gathering pill. Li Zongjio had not eaten another pill besides the one he had eaten on the first day. He still had 2 pills in his hand, so after consuming one, the Yuan Qi in his body began to churn. In Li Zongjio's mind, the mind white pearl began to spread out. The effects of the pill were instantly absorbed by Li Zongjio. This should be a characteristic of the White Dragon origin spirit. When Li Zongjio consumed these pills, the benefits he received would usually surpass that of ordinary people. Suddenly, the aura around Li Zongjio's body swelled. Elder Yen Beihan, who was about 10 meters away, opened his eyes in dissatisfaction. Li Zongjio's cultivation had caused too much of a commotion. A wave of air hit Yen Beihan's body and interrupted Elder Yen Beihan's breakthrough. Now, he was also looking for the key to his breakthrough and was waiting for the Yuan Qi wave to hit him. This damn brat. Yen Beihan was extremely unhappy that his cultivation had been interrupted. However, when he opened his eyes, he saw that Li Zongjio's body had undergone an extremely unusual change. Yuan Qi gathered around Li Zongjio's body, forming a Yuan Qi bath that tightly surrounded Li Zongjio. The Yuan Qi around Li Zongjio had already condensed to a peak, gushing out like spring water. The Yuan Qi seemed to have turned into a substantial Yuan Qi spring. Yen Beihan immediately stood up in shock. This guy, that Yuan Qi spring had directly washed away some people. Boom! The wave surged. At this moment, Li Zongjio's Yuan power had entered a frenzied breakthrough mode. Every time he broke through a level, Li Zongjio's aura would become stronger by a bit. As a result, the elemental energy in the surrounding area would surge even more violently. What's going on? Why is the Yuan Qi sinking to the ground? Some elders were also startled. Qin Lai and the rest were also shocked to see the changes around them. Is Protector Li breaking through? This level of yuan qi overflow is too terrifying. Yen Beihan suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. Not good, the yuan qi wave has been attracted here in advance. What? It's only the 4th day. Many of the elders were somewhat startled and surprised. However, they immediately made their preparations to welcome the incoming yuan power wave. However, the yuan qi wave this time was ferocious and was completely different from the previous one. Even Yen Beihan and Qin Lai, who had been here many times, had never seen such a ferocious yuan qi wave. Boom! It was as if a huge water ball had fallen from the sky. With a boom, it instantly fell into the fog snow valley. Poof! Some elders with weaker cultivations immediately fainted under the surging yuan qi wave. A few elders who were slightly clear-headed also discovered something shocking. They were falling again. What happened? Chapter 119. At this moment, in the foggy snow alchemy sect, many people looked in the direction of the foggy snow valley. Just a few moments ago, they saw a strange movement in the direction of the foggy snow valley. Then, after a muffled sound, countless white fog gushed out from the foggy snow valley and eventually swallowed the entire foggy snow valley. The entire foggy snow valley was a vast expanse of whiteness, and nothing could be seen clearly. A few peak masters arrived in front of the foggy snow valley in a flash and saw the white fog gushing out continuously. It seemed to have covered the entire foggy snow valley and no one could get close to it. There's something strange about the white fog. Du Shuangjiang, the peak master of the fierce peak, said. When they got close, they immediately felt the yuan power in their bodies gradually diluting. The 10 great elders are still in the valley, Lintong said. Not only that, but Li Zongjiu was also in the foggy snow valley. They couldn't just watch Li Zongjiu and the 10 great elders of the foggy snow alchemy sect die here. Sect master is here. Chu Oren also quickly rushed over. When he saw the thick white fog in front of him, his heart sank. Sect master, what's going on? Chu Oren shook his head. I've never seen such a situation before. The foggy snow valley is a place where yuan power gathers. It's a natural training ground. Why is this happening? However, although the white fog has the effect of swallowing yuan power, it doesn't harm the body. If we enter rashly, our yuan power will be swallowed by the white fog. It's difficult to move in the white fog. The white fog is to prevent outsiders from entering. Let's wait for 3 days. After 3 days, the yuan power in the foggy snow valley will dissipate. We'll enter the valley to investigate then. Chu Aoren made a prompt decision. At the same time, he also gave the order to seal off the fog snow valley. No one was allowed to get close to it. The appearance of the white fog was strange. There were no strange reactions after coming into contact with it. However, if there were any serious sequelae, it would be troublesome. Chu Aoren did not want this strange white fog to come out of nowhere and destroy his sect. Chu Aoren and the others could only observe the situation for the time being. Any yuan power that came into contact with this white fog would be immediately devoured completely. Such a strange scene made people's hearts involuntarily turn cold. Fortunately, the white fog only covered a small area around the fog snow valley. Other places were not affected. In the fog snow valley, Li Zongjiu opened his eyes. There was only a faint light around them, but Li Zongjiu knew that they were no longer in the same place. What happened? Li Zongjiu was suddenly curious. How could something like this happen in the fog snow valley? The clash of yuan power from before seemed to have caused an incredible impact, causing the originally small territory within the fog snow valley to sink by nearly 10 meters. The surrounding mountain walls seemed to have become taller. What happened? Is everything all right? Yen Beihan's voice rang out. The commotion just now was too big, and some people had not woken up when the waves of yuan power came crashing down, so they directly fainted. Only 6 elders were awake. One of them was injured. Qin Lai's cultivation was similar to Yen Beihan's, so he did not suffer any injuries. Li Zongjiu, look at what you've done. What have you done? Yen Beihan angrily rebuked. Li Zongjiu glanced at Yen Beihan. At this moment, the yuan power in Li Zhongjio's body finally calmed down. I just broke through to the 6th grade of the Yuan Master Realm. Li Zhongjio frowned. According to Li Zhongjio's own estimation, it would at least break through to the 7th grade, or even the 8th grade. This turtle origin energy gathering pill, in any case, was a 2nd grade high-grade pill. The effect should not be so bad. Old fox, what does this have to do with Enforcer Li? Don't bite people in a hurry. Qin Lai immediately roared after hearing this. He did not give Yen Beihan any face. When Yen Beihan heard this, he immediately looked at Qin Lai. Have you been beaten into an idiot by this brat? You can't even beat a teenager, and you still have the nerve to shout in front of me. Yen Beihan said mockingly. Qin Lai did not use his brain before doing things. In Yen Beihan's eyes, he was not a threat at all. To him, Qin Lai was just lucky to have such strength. In less than 2 years, Qin Lai would no longer be his opponent. Although the two of them were of the same rank, Yen Beihan still looked down on Qin Lai. Come. I want to see who's the idiot today. Qin Lai said as he rolled up his sleeves and was about to fight. The surrounding elders quickly came forward to stop the fight. They did not know what was going on. If they let the two experts fight again, they would not be able to leave. Li Zhongjio did not care about the dispute between Qin Lai and Yen Beihan. Instead, he was trying his best to recall what happened to the Fog Snow Alchemy sect in his previous life. Although I did not pay much attention to it at that time, I heard that the Fog Snow Alchemy sect suddenly obtained a treasure after I went missing. It made Chu Aoran a famous expert in the Dingquan province, but at the same time, it brought about a fatal disaster. Li Zhongjio thought in his heart. His memories of the Fog Snow Alchemy sect in his previous life were very vague because he rarely came into contact with them. Not long after, the Fog Snow Alchemy sect only existed in name. Could it be because of the changes in the Fog Snow Valley? Li Zhongjio raised his head and looked up. He immediately saw that there seemed to be something moving quickly at the top of the cliff. Its body was pale, but its movements were agile. On the cliffs around the Fog Snow Valley, it immediately formed a terrifying threat. Look, what's that? An elder from Lai Feng said. There was no white fog in the Fog Snow Valley, but outside the Fog Snow Valley, thick white fog could be seen. At the same time, there seemed to be something crawling out of the white fog, entering the valley and climbing down the cliff. Mutated meta beast? Yen Beihan and the others immediately became alert. Once the meta beast got close, it would not be fun. These meta beasts usually lived on human flesh and blood, and they were bloodthirsty. Yen Beihan and the others were also close to each other. They could already see at least 7 to 8 white beasts charging towards them at a fast speed from this distance. These white meta beasts were like crocodiles with longer limbs. However, their speed was even faster. They crawled on the cliff with their limbs as if they were walking on flat ground. Their huge heads seemed to have the strength of 10,000 kilograms. The corners of their long mouths outlined a few sharp teeth, and they were there to bite their prey. No, it's not a treasure. It seems to be a medicinal herb. Li Zhongjio's memory surged like a spring. Immediately, he locked onto a medicinal herb in his mind. Grade 5 spiritual herb. Heavenly Vein 7 stars. Chapter 120. I can't believe that I forgot about it. A grade 5 spirit herb was nothing to Li Zhongjio in his previous life. However, it was a rare treasure to Li Zhongjio, who was only at the Yuanshi level. Heavenly Vein 7 stars. If it was consumed directly, it could open one's 7 meridians and 8 meridians in a short period of time. If it was refined by an expert, it could be refined into a grade 5 elixir. Heavenly Vein elixir. In his previous life, Chu Oren had directly consumed the Heavenly Vein 7 stars, which allowed his cultivation to soar. He had reached an extremely powerful state, but in the end, he did not manage to preserve his cultivation. It was said that he was refined into a blood elixir. Just like what Li Zhongjio did, he directly refined a person into a blood elixir. This way, he could obtain the power in the blood. The Heavenly Vein 7 stars growth conditions are strange. It needs to grow at the bottom of the patio where spirit energy gathers. Li Zhongjio suddenly thought of this. He glanced at the fog-snow valley. It was not a valley at all. It was a patio. If that was the case, the heavenly vein 7 stars were beneath their feet. With the strength of the heavenly vein 7 stars' origin energy, it was enough to support a terrifying origin energy. It could even form a hollow area beneath Li Zhongjio and the others. The heavenly vein 7 stars were hidden beneath their feet. The elemental energy that Li Zhongjio had released earlier was actually being compressed by the ground, releasing the elemental energy from the underground. It attracted the white mutated metabeasts. These metabeasts are also here for the heavenly vein 7 stars. Li Zhongjio had already sorted out the situation in front of him. However, that Qin Lai suddenly shouted, "Everyone, be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding 7 to 8 mutated metabeasts charged towards Qin Lai and the others. 1,000 feet of flames. Yen Beihan formed a seal with both hands and immediately mobilized the origin energy in his body. It immediately turned into 1,000 feet of sharp sword and swept forward. However, the metabeasts' movements were swift and they dodged the attack with a few leaps. Earth-spreading flame. Qin Lai did the same. But this time, Qin Lai's creeping blue flames seemed to have grown eyes as they swept towards the 3 white origin beasts. However, this move didn't work. 2 of the origin beasts instantly broke free. Qin Lai paid special attention to the 3rd origin beast. He fell to the ground with a thud. Seeing this, Yen Beihan immediately activated the blazing sword aura that was several feet long and slashed towards the meta beast. Boom! The sword chi hit the meta beast and instantly shattered. It was like a vase falling on the floor. It shattered so cleanly. What? Yen Beihan was shocked. How could such a thing happen? His all-out attack was actually unable to harm the origin beast at all. Fortunately, the origin beast wasn't completely unscathed. After it landed on the ground, it stopped moving. Although it had a strong defense, that move was enough to shatter the internal organs of the origin beast. The meta beasts at the back were charging at them dauntlessly. The 6 of them immediately fell into a tough battle. At the same time, they had to protect the 4 elders who had fainted. Fortunately, these elders were all origin general experts. They didn't panic in such a dangerous situation. After exchanging blows with the meta beasts, they realized that the meta beast's strength was equivalent to that of an ordinary origin general expert. However, in terms of speed and defense, they were much faster than an ordinary origin general cultivator. Boom! One of the elders was suddenly flung by the meta beast. A ghastly wound appeared on his waist. Tai Maoshan! Qin Lai shouted. The injured elder was the elder from Blazing Peak. Elder Tai Maoshan was flung to the ground. At the same time, he was sent flying dozens of meters away. He rolled out of the defensive circle that Qin Lai and the others had set up. Oh no! Yen Beihan also shouted in a low voice. He wanted to go forward to save him, but the surrounding area was already under fierce attack. He couldn't free himself to do anything. The Yuan beast that had sent Tai Maoshan flying earlier pounced towards Tai Maoshan once again, preparing to devour him. Tai Maoshan lay on the ground. His waist was in great pain and blood was flowing. The dizziness from losing a large amount of blood filled his mind. Suddenly, Tai Maoshan started hallucinating. Boom! A figure fell in front of Tai Maoshan. Tai Maoshan was awakened by the shock. The scene in front of him also returned to normal. When Tai Maoshan saw the thing that had fallen beside him, he was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat. What? The meta beast that had been chasing after him was directly lying on the ground. There were obvious signs of breaking at its throat. This attack had already shattered its throat. Who did this? Tai Maoshan's gaze followed and immediately saw a young figure walking towards the battle circle. At that moment, Qin Lai and the others were surrounded by more than 10 white meta beasts. It's just a few white mist beasts. Li Zhongjio stretched his wrist. These white mist beasts were here to steal from him. Of course, Li Zhongjio wanted to kill them all. Moreover, if Li Zhongjio still didn't make a move, these people wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Be careful, Enforcer Li. Qin Lai couldn't help but remind Li Zhongjio when he saw him walking over leisurely. As soon as he finished speaking, Two white mist beasts pounced at Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio sped up and stretched out his hands. These white mist beasts seemed to have sensed Li Zongjio's intention. As they were flying, they violently swung their tails. One up and one down. The domineering power was enough to split Li Zongjio in half. However, Li Zongjio's body also moved horizontally in the air and easily dodged this attack. However, these white mist beasts weren't so lucky. Li Zongjio grabbed the throat of one of them. Li Zongjio inserted his whole hand into the throat and pulled out the larynx and other organs. Whoosh! Blood splattered everywhere on the ground. A kick landed on the white mist beast's body. Instantly, the white mist beast flew backward and crashed into the other one. While it was still in a daze, it saw a figure walking directly towards it. Immediately, the white mist beast used its unique skill. That was to pounce and bite. Die! Li Zongjio stretched out his hand and a ray of origin energy flew out from his hand. Although it wasn't strong, it was very fast. The origin energy blade that was as thin as a cicada's wing instantly cut off the origin beast's head. In front of Li Zongjio, these two domineering white mist beasts were like ducks with their necks stretched out and waiting for death. Their weakness is at the throat. Qin Lai saw this shocking scene. These two meta beasts were killed by Li Zongjio so easily. Evidently, Li Zongjio found their weakness. Since he had found their weakness, then everything was easy. So the defense on the other side is so weak. These elders immediately went on a killing spree. Their bodies were stained with blood, and they did not show any mercy. Moreover, their thoughts were very clear. About an hour later, the last white fog beast was killed by them. Blood splattered all over the ground. Yen Beihan panted heavily. However, he didn't dare to underestimate Li Zongjio anymore. There was even a trace of respect. Chapter 121. Reverence? Yen Beihan shook his head when he sensed this. How could this be possible? He was the great elder of the Crimson Afterglow Peak. How could he be in awe of a disciple from the Long Medicine Peak who was just a few days ago? However, when he saw Li Zongjio's attitude in the face of danger, he was shocked. It was as if he had been through thousands of battles. Moreover, when he was killing the meta beasts, he was so calm, practiced, and simple. There were no unnecessary movements and no excess meta energy. He was so straightforward when he attacked. In the eyes of Yen Beihan and the others, Li Zongjio was clearly an old monster who had been through hundreds of battles and was not a teenager. This kid must be a natural battle genius. Otherwise, where did he get his battle experience from? The few of them had been through a battle. Until now, they were still in shock and could not believe it. No one would have expected such a situation to occur in the Fog Snow Valley. Fortunately, it was the 10 great elders who were here. If the previous disciples were here, they would probably have been wiped out. There were more than 10 corpses on the ground. The boiling hot blood continued to seep into the ground. The rest of the elders were still in a state of shock. They were even discussing where these things came from. How could such a thing happen in the Fog Snow Valley? Some of the elders were treating their injuries. Li Zongjio looked at the way the blood was flowing and suddenly frowned. The blood flowed into the ground. However, it was not flowing randomly. Instead, after it gathered in one direction, it suddenly dropped in a straight line. The surrounding area seemed to be corroded by the blood. The 7-star heavenly veins power is the essence of meta energy. It is the most resistant to these bloody things. Oh no, there are meta beasts underground. Suddenly, Li Zongjio felt a strong murderous intent blossoming from the ground. Even if Li Zongjio wanted to leave the ground, it was too late. A huge tentacle rushed out from the ground with a boom. She wrapped her arms around Li Zongjio's waist. Li Zongjio's entire body was pulled directly towards the hole. Not good, Guardian Li is in danger. Qin Lai exclaimed. Everything happened so suddenly that even these Yuan generals couldn't react in time. They could only watch as Li Zongjio was dragged underground by that strange tentacle. 1,000 feet of flames. Yen Beihan's reaction was extremely fast. He swept his flame sword over, but it swept across the ground and did not cut anything. Li Zongjio was dragged away just like that. Everyone gathered around. When they saw the pitch-black hole, they couldn't help but feel their blood run cold. What kind of meta-beast was that just now? They looked at each other and couldn't help but tremble in their hearts. Yen Beihan seemed to have thought of something and could not help but gasp. Not good. The appearance of that tentacle just now seems to be the 9-in life-stealing octopus recorded in the sect. 9-in life-stealing octopus? Isn't that just a legend? I've always thought that this part of the record was just a legend. Legend has it that the Fog Snow Alchemy sect used to be a battlefield of meta-beasts. The 9-in life-stealing octopus was the king that was born there. Later on, for some reason, it drilled into the ground and disappeared. Qin Lai explained. Some elders didn't know about this record. Only great elders like them would pay attention to such things. But this 9-in life-stealing octopus is a meta-beast from at least 300 years ago. If it's still alive today, what kind of realm would it be? They looked at each other and couldn't help but be shocked. The Fog Snow Alchemy sect was established less than 100 years ago. This meta-beast had existed here for hundreds of years. It was simply unimaginable how powerful it was. Li Zongjio was captured by the 9-in life-stealing octopus. It was easy to imagine how painful this would be. We can't stay here for long. Quickly go back and report to the sect master before making a decision. Yen Beihan said. If it was really the 9-in life-stealing octopus, then the situation would be really troublesome. Anyway, Li Zongjio would definitely die. But who could guarantee that the 9-in life-stealing octopus wouldn't come out and slaughter everyone in the Snow Pill sect? There was such a terrifying meta-beast hiding under their sect's soil. Who could guarantee that it wouldn't come out of the ground and devour the entire sect while they were still sleeping? Qin Lai, what do you say? Qin Lai muttered to himself for a moment. Although he really wanted to rescue Li Zongjio at this moment, with their strength, they would only be throwing their lives away if they went down. If they continued to stay here, they would definitely be in danger. Moreover, the more serious thing was the potential threat. He had to report this matter to the sect. At the very least, he had to let the sect be prepared. There's no time to lose. We will report this to the sect immediately. As for Protector Li, he sacrificed himself heroically to protect the sect. Qin Lai said. The elders couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness in their hearts. Seeing the people of their sect being captured by the meta-beast with their own eyes, and they couldn't even do anything to save them, was the most helpless and infuriating thing. They loosened their clenched fists again. Qin Lai and Yen Beihan opened the seal in front of them and then walked out of the seal. However, the white mist outside didn't disperse. Their figures immediately rushed into the white mist. At first, they didn't feel anything. But the deeper they went, the weaker their strength became. Oh no, there's poison in the white mist. Qin Lai and Yen Beihan could sense each other, but the elders behind them lost their sense of direction. The journey wasn't considered long, only a distance of 1,000 meters. Even if they closed their eyes, they could still rush in. But when they plunged into the white mist, everything changed. It was as if they were trapped in this white world. You and I set up the formation here. If we retreat now, we will still die. At that moment, the two of them sat where they were. They used their remaining strength to maintain the formation around them. At the same time, they sent out a signal to summon the elders who had lost their way. At the same time, they also wanted to tell the sect experts outside the white mist that they were trapped here. With our cultivation, we can at most hold on for 3 days. If the white mist doesn't disperse after 3 days, we can only fight it out. Qin Lai poured out a pill from the porcelain bottle in his hand. This pill became their trump card at a time like this. If they didn't have this pill to replenish their strength, they would have lost their will to fight in less than a day. Chapter 122. In the crypt. Li Zongjio was swept away by the huge tentacle. Although he was caught off guard at first, Li Zongjio soon used his own escape technique. Yuan power enveloped his entire body. Just as that languid octopus-like thing was about to stuff Li Zongjio into its mouth, it immediately waved its sword and slipped out of the cave. His body landed on the ground in an instant. Around him was some sticky liquid that was jealous of him. Li Zongjio rubbed his fingers and frowned. How disgusting. The moment he was caught, Li Zongjio had already used his mind power to investigate the meta beast. This is the legendary 9-ene fatal octopus of the Fog Snow Pill sect. It's just a slightly bigger octopus. Li Zongjio's heart sank, because he suddenly remembered that this octopus should be a creature from more than 300 years ago. It actually lived until now and was buried underground all year round. What did it rely on to survive? Soon, Li Zongjio saw a place that was emitting light in this dark and damp environment. Heaven Vein 7-star grass. Li Zongjio saw the legendary Heaven Vein 7-star grass. Not far from the Heaven Vein 7-star grass, there was a huge octopus monster entrenched. Its huge limbs were also constantly swaying in all directions. As it swayed and lifted, some sticky liquid flowed out. It looked extremely disgusting. Above the octopus monster's head, some blood flowed down and dripped onto the octopus monster's head. So this octopus monster used the power of the Heaven Vein 7-star grass to attract these meta beasts. Li Zongjio thought to himself. This octopus monster was quite smart. However, the octopus monster refused to leave because it was waiting for the Heaven Vein 7-star grass to mature. The 9-ene fatal octopus should have caught Li Zongjio and eaten him. However, when it threw him into its mouth, it didn't eat anything. This puzzled the 9-headed deadly octopus. Unfortunately, Li Zongjio's body was too small. It was not enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. Therefore, he simply ignored this matter. This octopus is at least 200 meters long. Li Zongjio thought to himself. However, the most important thing right now was to pluck the Heaven Vein 7-star grass and leave this place. Such a giant octopus monster can almost dominate the underground world. It won't be easy to get it. Li Zongjio observed for a while. Based on the aura of this octopus monster, it should also be at the peak of the Yuan general grade. As long as it ate the Sky Vein 7-star grass, the octopus monster would become a Sky origin ancestor. No wonder Chu Oren was able to obtain the 7-star grass so easily in his previous life. If Chu Aoren were to take action, he would definitely be able to kill this 9-ene fatal octopus. I can't delay this any longer. Those elders will definitely ask the sect for help. At that time, Chu Aoren will definitely take action. It will be even more difficult to snatch the Sky Vein 7-star grass from Chu Oren. Li Zongjio thought to himself. Time was of the essence. He had to settle this in a short period of time. Otherwise, the situation would become even more complicated when Chu Aoren arrived. The Yuan power between heaven and earth gradually seeped through the ground. It surged towards the Sky Vein 7-star octopus. Rumble. The Sky Vein 7-star octopus emitted a radiant and holy power. When this power brushed past the 9-ene fatal octopus body, it immediately felt that the octopus body gradually became relaxed, as if it had entered a very relaxed state. How dare you absorb my Sky Vein 7-star grass? Li Zongjio was instantly enraged when he saw this. It was not easy for him to find the Sky Vein 7-star grass. How could he let such an idiot waste it? Li Zongjio immediately released his mental energy. At this moment, Li Zongjio's mental energy seemed to have turned into a white chess piece. How did my mental energy become like this? Li Zongjio thought that this was just a storage state. However, when he used his mental energy to attack, it still appeared in this state. However, just as Li Zongjio was in shock, the 9-ene fatal octopus had already discovered this trace of fluctuation. It immediately woke up from the relaxed state. The entire underground cave also began to rumble and shake. Then, the thick tentacles swept towards Li Zongjio from all directions. Boom! After sensing Li Zongjio's existence, the 9-ene fatal octopus was obviously very angry and unhappy. How dare such a puny human act so presumptuously in its territory? As a peak level 3 meta beast, Li Zongjio also knew how powerful this guy was. Now, the only power Li Zongjio could use to defeat this meta beast in front of him was his mental energy. Forget it, this white chess piece is white then, Li Zongjio thought. Although this mental energy was strange, it still had its power. Immediately, Li Zongjio used his mental energy as a hidden weapon and directly hit the 9-ene fatal octopus. Boom. Li Zongjiao's move directly knocked the 9-in fatal octopus over. The 9-in fatal octopus's huge body suddenly began to roll in the sealed cave. It turned the entire place upside down. At the same time, the mud below was constantly being lifted up. Li Zongjio propped up a portion of origin energy as a defense around his body. It blocked the mud from flying up. If he wanted to defeat this guy, he had to leave this place. Li Zongjio thought. Although the mental energy attack just now was extremely penetrative, the gap between the two parties was still quite big. The octopus had lived for hundreds of years, so its mental energy was more or less above Li Zongjio's strength. It just did not know how to use it. Li Zongjio's attack. Immediately, the 9-in fatal octopus felt pain. Pick the herb first. Li Zongjio's figure immediately rushed towards the Heaven Vein 7-star grass. At this moment, Li Zongjio had not come to fight with this big guy, but for the Heaven Vein 7-star grass. His figure rapidly approached. Amidst the chaos, the 9-in fatal octopus also suddenly shot a large amount of 9-in fatal gas in the direction of Li Zongjio. Once the 9-in fatal gas was wrapped around one's body, even if one's strength had reached the level of origin ancestor, he would definitely be dragged down and his cultivation level would plummet. There might even be side effects such as being in a trance. In the end, he would become a lunatic. 9-in fatal gas? Block it for me. Li Zongjio took out a blood bead from his chest. Immediately, the blood bead in his hand made a swoosh sound. It turned into a cloud of blood mist and blocked in front of him. It directly blocked all the 9-in baleful qi. After all, this underground cave was where the 9-in fatal octopus was located. It could not hold on for too long. Golden Dragon Original Spirit. Li Zongjio shouted in a low voice. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he directly wrapped the Heaven Vein 7-star grass in front of him with the energy in his hand. He grabbed it. According to his previous judgment, this Heaven Vein 7-star grass was on the verge of maturity. The white mist outside should have come because of the Heaven Vein 7-star grass's maturity. This heaven and earth treasure was indeed different. The breakthrough of one's state actually had the help of the power of heaven and earth. Just this point alone was enough to show how impressive the power of the Heaven Vein 7-star grass was. Caught it! Li Zongjio's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Li Zongjio had already grasped the Heaven Vein 7-star grass in his hand. The tyrannical spiritual energy lingering in his hand also made Li Zongjio's heart surge. Boom! Suddenly, the surrounding mud seemed to explode. Li Zongjio was directly blown to the ground by the mud. Buzz! There seemed to be a surge of power rising from the 9-in fatal octopus. It directly broke the ground and a huge figure rushed out of the ground. Li Zongjio also returned to the ground again, covered in mud. When the 9-in fatal octopus's figure completely climbed out of the ground, Li Zongjio's eyes were filled with surprise. It's so big, even bigger than I thought. Chapter 123. It was obvious that the 9-in fatal octopus had also seen Li Zongjio. There was also the smell of the 7 stars Heaven Vein grass that still lingered in Li Zongjio's body. This 7-star grass had been guarding this place for close to 300 years. Just as it was about to mature, the 7-star grass had been snatched away by someone else. Such monstrous anger caused the 9-in fatal octopus to erupt. Dozens of tentacles propped up its huge body, and it immediately assumed the posture of a giant beast. When such a huge body stood up, it covered the sky and covered the sun. Li Zongjio saw the 9-in fatal octopus body growing bigger and bigger. Let's go! Li Zongjio did not say anything. Since he had already gotten the elixir, there was no point in continuing the fight. Of course, he would let Chu Eoren deal with it. As the 7-star grass was plucked away, the white fog that was used to protect the area slowly disappeared. Elder Qin Lai and the others, who were prepared for a protracted battle, also stood up. Fortunately, they were not attacked while waiting in the white fog. When the elders stood up, they happened to see Chu Oren and the others landing in front of them. As the sect master of the Fog Snow Elixir sect, he naturally paid attention to such a big event. When he saw the white fog gradually disappear, he immediately rushed over. Du Shuangjiang, the peak master of the Fierce Peak, accompanied him. As for the peak master of the Crimson Afterglow Peak, he was overseeing the sect and directing most of the disciples to carry out other matters. Seeing the arrival of Chu Aoran and Du Shuangjiang, these elders felt as if they were relieved of a heavy burden. It was as if they had been saved and all of them relaxed. Sect Master, something bad has happened. Protector Li is... Qin Lai thought of Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio was dragged into the ground by the meta beast, and it was likely that he was done for. However, before Qin Lai could finish his words, then a thunderous boom could be heard. Boom! The mountain behind him seemed to have exploded. The cliffs in the Fog Snow Valley were also constantly shattered. This patio was easily shattered at this moment. Suddenly, a huge beast emerged from within. Its huge limbs kept climbing up the surrounding cliffs. 9-yin Fatal Seal. It really is the 9-yin Fatal Octopus. Qin Lai and Yen Beihan saw this and cried out in surprise. Chu Aoran raised his head and saw the enormous 9-yin Fatal Octopus. It's actually the 9-yin Fatal Octopus? I didn't expect the records in the Fog Snow Valley to be real. The Fog Snow Valley wasn't originally occupied by the Fog Snow Alchemy sect, but by another sect. Later on, this sect declined, and the ruins were occupied by the Fog Snow Alchemy sect, who established a new sect. The records of the Misty Snow Valley were passed down. He had never imagined that the 9-yin Fatal Octopus would actually exist. Then in front, is there someone running? Du Shuangjiang pointed to the front and said. A thin and weak figure was flying out of the forest at high speed. It's Li Zongjio, Chu Aoran said. With his eyesight, he could naturally see it. Li Zongjio's figure swayed, and the 9-yin Fatal Octopus chased after him. If it weren't for Li Zongjio's exquisite footwork, he might have been thrown into the 9-yin Fatal Octopus's mouth again. A mere 9-yin Fatal Octopus dares to cause trouble in my sect's territory. Chu Aoran's voice was like a huge bell that spread everywhere. Like a rolling wave, it swept past Li Zongjio's figure and rushed towards the mountain-like 9-yin Fatal Octopus, which was almost 300 meters behind him. Rumble! Chu Aoran's aura collided with the 9-yin Fatal Octopus. The 9-yin Fatal Octopus immediately released the 9-yin Fatal Octopus, which turned into a torrent and rushed down. Under the 9-yin Fatal Octopus, the lush trees below instantly withered and their leaves drifted away. Such a terrifying scene of withering was shocking even to ordinary people. In the eyes of the elders, they were also extremely fearful. Li Zongjio smoothly dodged this attack. Even when he was running for his life, he didn't panic and was orderly. It seemed that he was very confident, which was why he arrived so easily. After his figure landed, Li Zongjio also looked at Chu Aoran, who was fighting the 9-yin Fatal Octopus behind him. Protector Li, are you all right? Qin Lai stepped forward and hurriedly asked. They had abandoned Li Zongjio in the Fog Snow Valley and fled. It was indeed not very righteous, but in the situation at that time, no one dared to act rashly. They couldn't be blamed. Moreover, Li Zongjio didn't count on them at all. It was better to leave one's life in one's own hands. I'm fine, Li Zongjio said indifferently. He turned around and looked at the battle between Chu Aoran and the 9-headed Fatal Octopus. Such a scene was not much different from his previous life. With Chu Aoran's strength as a Sky Origin ancestor, killing the 9-headed Fatal Octopus could be said to be a piece of cake. After all, there was an entire level of difference between them. However, after killing the 9-yin Fatal Octopus, the Heaven Pulse 7-star herb would fall into Li Zongjio's hands. When Li Zongjio gathered enough herbs, he would refine the great overarching Heaven Pulse pill. Whether it was to prolong one's life, strengthen one's body, or increase one's origin energy, it wouldn't be a problem. Chu Aoran's Sky Origin Ancestor aura was fully displayed. The slash of origin energy was incomparably sharp. It turned into a sharp sword and directly split the 9-yin Fatal Octopus into two. A peak level 3 Origin Beast's origin crystal was in his hands. This origin crystal was a kind of substance condensed in the body of a origin beast. It was also the core of the Origin Beast's power. Using this Origin crystal could be used for many purposes, such as providing energy for an array, to refine this pill, or to use it for other purposes. These were all very common. Origin crystals also had their own attributes. The higher the level, the rarer the attribute, and the greater the value. Just an ordinary peak level 3 Origin crystal like this was worth more than 1,000,000 gold yuan. Not to mention that this was an Origin crystal with 9 fatal aura. Sect Master is amazing! Qin Lai and the others exclaimed. As expected of the Sect Master of the Fog Snow Pellet sect. Only with such strength could he protect the sect. Even without the elders, the Sect Master alone was enough to support the entire sect. This was the embodiment of one person and one sect. As long as the Sect Master was around, the Fog Snow Pellet sect would also be around. I didn't expect this beast to really exist. Fortunately, there weren't too many casualties this time. Chu Aoran said. Then his gaze fell on Li Zongjio. Custodian Li, do you know why the 9 life-stealing octopus is underground? Chu Aoran's eyes were like needles that pierced towards Li Zongjio. However, on the surface, he remained calm and collected. The 9 fatal octopus must be hiding at the bottom of the Fog Snow Valley for a reason. Otherwise, it wouldn't stay here so foolishly. Among so many elders, only Li Zongjio was captured and successfully escaped. If it really wanted to do something, only Li Zongjio had the strength and opportunity to do so. I don't know. On the other hand, Li Zongjio calmly spat out 2 words. He was expressionless. With Chu Aoran's skills, he was still far from being able to get anything out of Li Zongjio. Chapter 124. Chu Aoran stared at Li Zongjio for a while, but Li Zongjio's body did not fluctuate at all. It was as if he was completely unaware. However, Chu Aoran knew that this was because Li Zongjio's own belief had reached a state of stubbornness. Others would want to see the flaw in Li Zongjio's body. That was almost an impossible thing. After a while, Chu Aoran withdrew his gaze. Since it was futile, there was no need to continue investigating. Since everyone is fine, let's go back and rest. Let the people from the Long Medicine Peak take away the corpse of this metabeast and see what it can be used to refine. Chu Aoran said. Li Zongjio and the others also left directly. They originally had 4 days to break through, but now that something like this had happened, their original cultivation plan was disrupted. Li Zongjio was also helpless. However, Li Zongjio also knew that from today onwards, the Yuan Qi gathering in the Fog Snow Valley would not happen again. The Fog Snow Valley existed in name only. Although the Yuan Qi in the Fog Snow Valley was denser than the outside world due to the remaining power of the Heaven Pulse 7-star grass, it would definitely not cause such a scene. Therefore, Li Zongjio did not have any use for staying here. That day, Li Zongjio left the Fog Snow Pill sect and returned to the Luoxia city as a protector. The cooperation between the Luoxia city's Li family and the Long Medicine Peak was still going on. With the Long Medicine Peak's agreement, the Li family's profits also increased exponentially. And today, the Li family received an invitation from the Northern Medicine City. The Northern Medicine Alliance of the Northern Medicine City invited the Li family's patriarch to the Northern Medicine City for a chat. Just when everyone was hesitating about what to do, Fli Tianqing went to the Northern Medicine Alliance. The outcome could be imagined. It was unknown whether he could survive, but it was certain that he would not be able to return in one piece. After all, the Li family killed their deputy alliance leader Shang Quan. This was a very serious matter. The Northern Medicine Alliance took so long to make a move. This made the Li family suspicious. Logically speaking, the Northern Medicine Alliance should have formed a storm and swept over the Li family. But now, he just received a plain invitation card. Family head Li, what do you think? This is an invitation personally written by our Northern Medicine Alliance's Alliance Master. You should at least reply so that I can go back and pass on the message. Within the Li family courtyard, a man sat on the high seat with his head held high. Beside him was Li Tianqing, who was carefully reading a gilded invitation in his hand. The signature is Mr. Fu Leichun. As far as I know, Fu Leichun should be an elder of the Northern Medicine Alliance, right? Li Tianqing ignored the other party's question. He heard Li Tianqing's words. The expression of the messenger from the Northern Medicine Alliance changed, and his face turned gloomy. Our old chief is ill and has abdicated. Now Chief Fu is in charge of the Northern Medicine Alliance. Is there a problem? No. Whatever you say. Li Tianqing said repeatedly, as if he was afraid of offending the messenger. However, his words made the messenger feel that he was being perfunctory and disregarded. Li Tianqing didn't seem to care about his words at all. The attitude of these people from the Li family seemed to be quite arrogant. He was a messenger from the Northern Medicine Alliance. How dare they be so disrespectful to him? In such a small city like Luoxia City, there was actually a family with such a big temper. They were really short-sighted and did not know how to curry favor with him. This is an invitation card. Next time, it will be a letter of challenge. Family head Li, please think carefully. In addition, Family head Li, you must give an explanation for the matter of Deputy Chief Shang Quan. Otherwise, this matter will not be so simple. The messenger said lightly. The threat in his eyes was very obvious. What's the next time? Li Tianqing seemed to be a little hard of hearing. He had to repeat the same sentence twice. A letter of challenge. Li Tianqing, don't put on an act in front of me. You know very well what your Li family has done. Now, either you obediently follow me back to Northern Medicine City, or I'll let our people from the Northern Medicine Alliance stay in Luoxia City for a few days. Obviously, the Northern Medicine Alliance had undergone a great change of personnel. But the abdication of the chief should be replaced by the deputy chief. Now that the deputy chief was missing, there had to be an explanation. As long as Li Tianqing was taken away, they could give an explanation, whether it was to be a scapegoat or to prove it casually. Then the Li family would be lost. The consequences of killing a deputy chief would not be so simple. What's going on? Just when Li Tianqing was about to continue playing dumb, a voice sounded from outside the house. Hearing this voice, everyone turned their heads to look at the source of the voice. Li Zongjio walked in from outside the house. When he just came back, he heard that someone from the Northern Medicine Alliance had come. Regardless of whether they were here to settle scores or to do something else, Li Zongjio did not care. Were you the one who slammed the table just now? Li Zongjio looked at the messenger from the Northern Medicine Alliance. This messenger had some status in the Northern Medicine Alliance, and he was now Fu Chunlei's trusted aide. After Fu Chunlei ascended to the position, a lowly person like him naturally rose to the heavens. Now that he came to Luoxia City to show off, he found that the people from the Li family were either stupid or dumb. After all this time, it turned out that they were just pretending to be dumb. This made him very angry. Now, a junior had come in, and he was very rude. Pointing at me? Does he have any seniority? How can I let a kid interrupt when the adults are talking? Moreover, I didn't slam the table just now. I didn't, the messenger said. Throw him out. My Li family's table is not something you can casually slam. Li Zongjio said directly. As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Xuanwu had already stood up. In an instant he came in front of the messenger. Before the messenger could quibble, he was directly grabbed and thrown out. Plop. The messenger fell to the ground in a daze. Although he was a trusted aide, his strength was not flattering. In front of Li Tianqing and the others, he was considered powerful. But in front of Gu Xuanwu, it was a piece of cake. He easily threw the messenger out. Seeing Li Zongjio appear, Gu Xuanwu did not say anything. As soon as this guy came in, that arrogant look on his face showed that he wanted to throw him out of the room. But Li Tianqing did not give the order, so he could only continue to delay. Why did you cause trouble as soon as you came back? That is the messenger of the Northern Medicine Alliance. Li Tianqing saw Li Zongjio's recklessness and could not help but say anxiously. The Northern Medicine Alliance. Li Zongjio seemed to have suddenly realized. The messenger who was thrown to the ground also climbed up with his hands on his waist. You wait for me. Since he is from the Northern Medicine Alliance, just arrest him. Li Zongjio said. Immediately, the guards of the Li family stepped forward and grabbed the messenger. "How dare you? Li Tianqing, you are really bold. Your Li family will die." Chapter 125. The result was obvious. The messenger from the Northern Medicine Alliance was not only thrown into the dungeon, but he was also severely beaten. He wanted to show this guy the power of the whip. "The Northern Medicine Alliance sent me such an invitation. They obviously want me to take the blame," Li Tianqing said. "It's just the Northern Medicine Alliance. After some time, these people will either come to apologize in person or directly destroy them." Li Zongjio glanced at the invitation in his hand. It was not an invitation. It was clearly written in a commanding tone. It was directly torn apart by Li Zongjio. "Zongjio, you're so young. Why are you so murderous?" Li Tianqing could not help but frown. With a personality like that, if one day you really meet a tough opponent, you'll probably be the one who'll be in trouble. How can there be a war without bloodshed? Since father gave me this name, I will do it, Li Zongjio said directly. These words made Li Tianqing speechless. After that, Li Zongjio chatted with Li Tianqing for a while about the development of the Li family's business recently. When he heard that Bai Luoxue had led the Li and Bai family's troops into the Huangyuan mine and even fought against the 3 mounted bandits, Li Zongjio was stunned by her ruthless methods. Although both sides suffered a lot of losses. Through such a battle, they also showed their firm stand. It also let the people in Flying Cloud City, who were close by, know the power of the Li family and the Bai family. The families in this small Luoxia city were just a group of mobs, but such a situation happened. For a time, some of the forces that wanted to bully the Li family stopped in their tracks. In their hearts, they had to carefully weigh their options. After all, no one wanted to provoke a tough bone. By the way, your grandfather's birthday is in half a month's time. I've already prepared everything. You can go over first and make the arrangements. There have been so many things going on recently. I'll go over on the same day. Li Zongjio's grandfather lived in a small town called Guanxi Town, which was more than 4,000 li west of Luoxia City. In the past, Li Zongjio had also headed west. Eventually, he found the love of his life in Guanxi Town, who was Li Zongjio's mother. After his rebirth, Li Zongjio had not seen his mother for a long time. Thinking back, although his mother was strict with Li Zongjio, whoever dared to say anything bad about Li Zongjio would grab a rolling pin and rush out of the kitchen. He gave the other party and his father a good beating. All right, Li Zongjio said. He was not going alone this time. There was a carriage full of silk, gold, silver, and jewelry that would be transported by carriage. In addition to the guards in charge of transportation, Gu Man also set off with Li Zongjio. Li Gui was also the leader of the Li family guards. Since they had seen the young master's ability, there was no one in the Li family who did not admire Li Zongjio. No one did not want to work beside their young master. Maybe they could be taught a thing or two. Before they left, Li Zongjio also came to the Li family's alchemy hall. These days, Wang Jing had been living quite comfortably. However, the alchemy disciples below him had suffered one by one. However, these people were surprisingly obedient. They even had a sense of blind worship for Wang Jing. Others did not dare to imagine that such a situation would occur. However, Li Zongjio had expected it. Wang Jing was not bragging. Back then, Wang Jing had really been to the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion of the dynasty. However, it was the trip to the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion that awakened Wang Jing's talent in alchemy. This was because there were some things that were not known to outsiders. In short, they were jealous. With the golden-winged blue-tailed eagle in charge of the family, Li Zongjio was absolutely assured. Even if the people from Northern Medicine City wanted to kill their way in, they would have to invite an expert like Chu Aoran. Only then would it be possible for them to exterminate the Li family. However, it would be especially easy to invite a Sky Origin ancestor like Chu Aoran to help. It took nearly 10 days to reach Guanxi Town from Luoxia City. Traveling 400 miles in a day was considered relatively fast for a journey of 4,000 miles. Although the journey was long, it was also full of challenges. Li Zongjio was not worried. If there were really people who did not know what was going on, he would just kill them directly. He could also use this opportunity to study it properly. Ancient Golden Tyrant Body Technique, Bai Shen Fu. What kind of origin technique was hidden in the blood dragon's origin soul? Li Zongjio was extremely curious. Every single one of these was a top-notch existence. The method of charging to the saint level with 4 dragons is correct. However, forcefully merging the strength that the 4 great dragon souls have already cultivated is naturally something that I will not be able to endure. If these 4 types of strength had been in my body from the very beginning, and I had cultivated them all by myself, before finally merging them together, this should be the true 4 dragons charging to the saint level. Li Zongjio had consulted various ancient books in the past. Now, he had finally understood the profound meaning of this. After comprehending this point, Li Zongjio realized how difficult it was to break through to the saint stage. These 4 Dragon Soul Supremes had already spent their entire lives and efforts to break through to such a realm. If it were Li Zongjio, he would need at least 4 times as much time and opportunities, or even more. This process was also unimaginable. Let's go to Guanxi Town. Li Zongjio waved his hand. This time, there were 5 carriages and 2 carriages. They moved forward quickly. Generally speaking, 2 carriages would be prepared for a journey. Firstly, it was used to change the route. Secondly, it could also deceive the enemy. During this process, at least the enemy would not be able to distinguish between the real and the fake. In case something like an assassination happened, it could more or less block it. Gu Man was in charge of driving the carriage and walked at the front. As for Li Zongjio, he was quietly cultivating in the carriage. While cultivating the Bai Shen Fu, he was also cultivating the ancient Golden Tyrant Body Technique. Li Gue, who was the most experienced, rode a horse and led the way in front. This journey was known as the border of the Tianyan dynasty. It was the largest forest of elemental beasts, called the Blackwater Forest. The entire Blackwater Forest was the territory of the elemental beasts. It was sparsely populated, but because the number of treasures produced was relatively small, it was considered an extremely unpopular place. If one was injured or trapped here, it was estimated that one would not be able to wait for half a day for an adventurer or mercenary to come. Although it was said that they were walking on the border, it was still very easy for accidents to happen in the Blackwater Forest. They had to be extra careful. Chapter 126. The surroundings were pitch black, and the fallen leaves were silent. There was only a bonfire burning quietly, and the crackling of the dried branches brought about some sparks. The flames circled in the sky, then extinguished. Li Zongjio's team was resting here. Gu Man was lying on a rock, the black wind blowing, and the moonlight shining on his head. Suddenly, he seemed to smell blood in the air. He immediately got up, crawled on the rock, and stared in front of him. He took out the dagger from his chest and stared in front of him. Outside of Luoxia City, it was necessary to bring a defensive weapon. After all, some meta-beasts were not strong, but their skin was thick, and their defense was strong. If one did not use a weapon, it would be very difficult to break through their defense. This was not some cruel and bloodthirsty meta-beast. It was a small black fox. This is a black crystal fox. Gu Man exclaimed. As someone who had rich experience in fighting in the wild, he was naturally familiar with black crystal foxes. If someone could catch this black crystal fox, it would be equivalent to owning a mansion in a first-tier city. It was a symbol of nobility and mystery. Why is this black crystal fox here? Black crystal foxes only liked to stay in their own caves and rarely came out. Moreover, the places they lived in usually had powerful spiritual creatures. If one could find a black crystal fox, it would be equivalent to finding a heavenly treasure. How could they not be rich? What's going on? It's a black crystal fox. Should we catch it? Li Gue also moved to Gu Man's side. Although his reaction was not as sharp as Gu Man's, he was still the captain of the guards. His intuition told him that something was wrong. When he moved closer to take a look, he also discovered that it was a black crystal fox. Look at what the black crystal fox is holding in its mouth. Gu Man pointed at the black crystal fox. The black crystal fox was holding something in its mouth. Gu Man had little experience in this area. Li Gui immediately saw what the black crystal fox was holding in its mouth. It's white jade crispy bamboo shoots. It has the effect of strengthening bones and tendons, as well as the effect of regenerating muscles. This is a rare spiritual medicine. Li Zongjio cried out in alarm. At this moment, the black crystal fox seemed to have found the right direction and leaped towards Li Zongjio. If the creature that had charged into Li Zongjio's carriage had been a snake or an aggressive meta beast, Li Gui and the others would have already taken action and captured the black crystal fox. However, this black crystal fox seemed to have come to deliver a treasure to them, so they didn't make a move. Instead, they carefully observed it. If Li Zongjio directly called for help, then they wouldn't hesitate to kill him. However, Li Zongjio's carriage was completely calm. Not long after, the black crystal fox emerged from the carriage and left the campsite. When Li Gui and Gu Man saw this scene, both of them revealed a trace of shock in each other's eyes. The black crystal fox is giving him a treasure? This is fucking amazing. He had probably never seen such a shocking scene in his entire life. They couldn't help but praise their young master's remarkable abilities. To think that the black crystal fox would actually deliver its treasures to him. Li Zongjio, who was in the carriage, looked at the black crystal fox. A trace of disbelief appeared in his eyes as he looked at the white jade crispy bamboo shoot in his hand. I didn't expect this white god fu to have such an effect. It can communicate with all things. This is the true use of mental energy. It can't directly kill people. Although in his previous life, Li Zongjio had already become the evil lord, in this life, he had been reborn. His cultivation should have improved by leaps and bounds. However, this Li Zongjio had comprehended something that he hadn't comprehended in his previous life. He also had a deeper understanding of cultivation. Just now, Li Zongjio had only tried to release his mental energy to the black crystal fox. According to the description of the white god Fu, he had dispersed a summoning intent. However, after waiting for a long time, he didn't see any movement. Just when Li Zongjio thought that this thing was useless, the black crystal fox delivered its treasure to him. This saved Li Zongjio a lot of trouble. This is a good method. Just when Li Zongjio was excitedly trying to cultivate his white god Fu. In the Blackwater Forest. Several figures were hurriedly moving forward. It was here just now. I clearly saw it. That black crystal fox really passed by here with the white jade crispy bamboo shoot in its mouth. One of them said. There was a strange symbol engraved on his clothes. If Li Zongjio was here, he would definitely recognize that this was the uniform of the Black Zen sect. The entire Black Zen sect was intercepted and killed. They either fled or scattered. Who would have thought that they would reappear in the Blackwater Forest? Trash, you can't even watch a fox. An angry voice scolded. However, this voice's accent wasn't very smooth. It shouldn't be someone from around here. Under the moonlight, one could see that this person had coarse curly hair, a high nose bridge and azure eyes. The handle of the scimitar in his hand was embedded with a few gems. This was the style of the Outlands. In the Shengyan dynasty, there was still a piece of land that had not been recovered. Due to various reasons, it was left behind. This piece of land was called the Outlands. The people in this Outlands were a mix of good and bad people, and it was filled with chaos. And these people from the Outlands definitely didn't come to the Shengyan dynasty with good intentions. The person from the Black Zen sect was scolded. His expression was obviously not good, but he didn't dare to say anything. At that moment, he could only blame the anger in his heart on the black crystal fox. It was all the black crystal fox's fault for disappearing too quickly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been scolded. These people from the Outlands were arrogant and despotic. If they were in a bad mood, they might just kill someone. Now that even the Black Zen sect's sect leader had to listen to them, they naturally had nothing to say. Moreover, these people from the Outlands were very strong. Suddenly, a black light flashed in front of him. The person from the Black Zen sect was shocked. There I see it, the black crystal fox. It's the black crystal fox. The black crystal fox's figure was running at top speed. However, this time, it couldn't escape this disaster. The Outlands expert with the treasured saber pulled out the long saber at his waist and swung it in front of him. Boom! The saber whistled and accurately chopped the black crystal fox's foot. Immediately, a miserable cry was heard. The black crystal fox's foot was directly chopped off. Blood dripped. It curled up in pain. In the next second, then he lifted the black crystal fox with one hand. I want to see how this little thing with a broken leg can run now. The Outlands expert, Jin Yu-jun, said with a cruel smile on his face. It was as if he saw the black crystal fox struggling in pain. The happier he was, the more excited he was. Chapter 127. The black crystal fox was caught. The people from the Black Zen sect saw that the black crystal fox's leg had been cut off and cried out in alarm. Aya, this black crystal fox is an expert at finding treasures. If its leg is cut off, how are we going to find the elixir? How are we going to lead the way? You said that if we find this thing, we can find the white jade crispy bamboo shoots. Now you're telling me that we can't find it? Are you playing with me? Jin Yu-jun shouted angrily. The people from the Black Zen sect patiently explained the situation to Jin Yu-jun. Finally, Jin Yu-jun frowned. It's so troublesome to find something. This little thing is already useless. If it's useless, then I'll just kill it. Jin Yu-jun sneered. This black crystal fox was so weak that it could be easily slaughtered. How pitiful! Jin Yu-jun immediately threw the black crystal fox into the sky with his left hand. Firstly, it was to satisfy his anger. Secondly, it was to let the people from the Black Zen sect know that he, Jin Yu-jun, was powerful. It was time to show them his power. This way, they wouldn't dare to act recklessly and would know what it meant to be obedient. Just as Jin Yu-jun was about to pull out his blade, he realized that the black crystal fox above his head had disappeared. It disappeared? Did it grow wings and fly away? Suddenly, Jin Yu-jun's body felt a trace of vigilance. It was an extremely dangerous aura that was being released. Jin Yu-jun, who had fought on the battlefield for many years and climbed out of piles of corpses, immediately felt the dense killing intent. What? Although Jin Yu-jun was vigilant, he didn't react in time. There was already someone standing behind him. Even with his back facing the person, Jin Yu-jun could clearly feel the killing intent in the eyes of the person behind him. It was a killing intent that could truly kill. If Jin Yu-jun dared to act recklessly, the person behind him would definitely kill him. Who is it? The four people from the Black Zen sect also saw the figure that suddenly appeared. When did this person appear behind them? They didn't notice at all. It was too scary. Fortunately, this person was standing behind Jin Yu-jun. Did you chop off this black crystal fox's leg? A voice rang in Jin Yu-jun's ears. However, Jin Yu-jun had a feeling that this voice came from the Nine Serenities Hell. Cold sweat trickled down his back. Based on Jin Yu-jun's judgment, he only had one chance to draw his blade. Friend, I'm from Qingyuan Villa. If you have anything to say, let's talk nicely. Li Zongjio's eyes turned cold. In the next instant, he flicked his finger and a stream of yuan energy shot towards Jin Yu-jun's ear. By the time Jin Yu-jun realized what was going on, Li Zongjio directly cut off half of the ear. Damn it! Anger flashed in Jin Yu-jun's eyes. The piercing pain in his ears was unbearable. At the same time, Jin Yu-jun was also looking for an opportunity to strike. Looks like you're the one who did it. Then leave your leg behind. Li Zongjio said calmly. Jin Yu-jun was shocked. Kill him for me. Jin Yu-jun shouted. At the same time, he reached for the long blade at his waist. The action of unsheathing the long blade had been practiced countless times. However, when he used it this time, he realized that something was wrong. Because there was nothing on his waist. A wave of fear came from his heart. Jin Yu-jun immediately realized what was going on. At the same time, his body rushed forward. However, Li Zongjio had already swung his blade down. Shwa! Jin Yu-jun's legs were left on the ground. His thighs fell to the ground with a thud. My leg! Jin Yu-jun roared in pain. The yuan energy in his body immediately wrapped around the wound. He knew the sharpness of his 7-star treasure blade. At this moment, even if he wanted to escape, he had no legs to run to. He could only watch as his legs were still in front of him. Go! Kill him! The 4 people from the Black Zen sect were about to charge towards Li Zongjio when they saw a dozen figures suddenly appear from the darkness. The leader was as strong as an ox. He did not fear any blade or spear as he charged forward. His fist exerted force and instantly smashed one of the Black Zen sect experts to the ground. Bang! The Black Zen sect member immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. His mind was in chaos. Gu Man roared like a beast that had just escaped from its cage. An ambush! However, it was already too late. Li Zongjio led his men out of the darkness. The 3 people were already frightened by Li Zongjio's invincible might. Now that so many people had appeared to ambush them, none of them dared to resist. He was pinned to the ground in no time. Li Zongjio glanced at the black crystal fox in his arms. At this moment, the black crystal fox had already lost its life due to excessive blood loss. Even though Li Zongjio had more than 3,000 years of experience, and even though he had already seen through life and death, he was still extremely furious when he saw such a situation. If you kill me, you will become an enemy of Qingyuan Villa, Jin Yujun said in a deep voice. At this moment he used his yuan power to seal the wound. Although it temporarily reduced the pain to a minimum, the shock he felt when he saw his own legs in front of him was indescribable. He could only temporarily suppress the anger and shock in his heart. At the same time, he had to stay awake. Right now, the most important thing was to survive. He could not die like this. Only by living could he take revenge. Qingyuan Villa? When they heard the name of Qingyuan Villa, whether it was Gu Man or Li Gue, both of them were shocked in their hearts because the reputation of the Qingyuan Villa was too great. In the entire Xingyan dynasty, it was a famous existence. This was because the owner of Qingyuan Villa was the current first prince of the dynasty, King Qingyuan. This so-called first prince was one of the younger brothers of the emperor. However, the title of first prince meant that his cultivation was the strongest. Among all the princes, King Qingyuan was the most powerful. Furthermore, he was a genuine Yuan monarch powerhouse. A living Yuan monarch powerhouse could be said to be invincible. Moving mountains and filling seas was a piece of cake for them. Ascending to the top in a single bound was not a difficult task for them. Unexpectedly, in such a remote Blackwater forest, he actually met King Qingyuan's subordinate. Since he was a member of Qingyuan Villa, he could not be casually killed by an outsider. If that was the case, where would King Qingyuan put his face? Oh, Qingyuan Villa? Was it that idiot Villa who wanted to rebel but was killed without leaving a single piece of armor behind? You are the only one who treats it as a treasure. Li Zongjio recalled. Qingyuan Villa was indeed quite famous in his previous life. However, the owner of Qingyuan Villa was really a fool. He thought that he had recruited some experts and won over some people's hearts. He even wanted to be the Wolin Alliance's leader or something. However, in the end, he wanted to rebel. In just one night, the experts of Qingyuan Manor were all either dead or injured. At the same time, a big fire burned Qingyuan Villa for 7 days and 7 nights. During the burning period, no one dared to put out the fire. Those were hellish screams. There were also cries for help that filled the air above Qingyuan Villa. In short, the outcome was very tragic. How could the dignity of the imperial family be so easily shaken? Therefore, Li Zongjio mocked the person in front of him. Since you are from Qingyuan Villa, then I will do you a favor and send you on your way. Li Zongjio's voice fell. He directly chopped down with his long saber. Swoosh. 2 slashes. Clean and neat. He directly chopped off Jin Yujun's hand. Ah! Jin Yujun immediately shouted loudly. This kind of pain was simply heart-wrenching. The most important thing was, when his arms were chopped off, it immediately caused a gap to appear in his body. The origin energy in his body could no longer be gathered. Instantly, the pain of his hands and legs being chopped off directly attacked his heart. This made Jin Yujun hover between life and death in pain. Li Zongjio lowered his body and buried the black crystal fox in front of Jin Yujun's body. Jin Yujun couldn't move at all. He wanted to fall down but found that he couldn't. The four of you watch him die. If not, you will die with him, Li Zongjio said indifferently. Chapter 128. In the end, the four people from the Black Zen sect all knelt around Jin Yujun. They stared at Jin Yujun. If Jin Yujun didn't die, they would be the ones to die. They didn't know where these people came from. Jin Yujun, who had the strength of a grade 6 Yuan master. He couldn't resist at all. This young man was terrifyingly powerful. Li Zongjio and the others were already far away. Li Zongjio felt extremely regretful that the black crystal fox was killed. After all, he had just established a spiritual connection with it. But now it was killed. Therefore Li Zongjio was the first to know. He had just understood the charm of the white god Fu. But it wasn't a pity, because Li Zongjio had already avenged him. Young master? Aren't we going to kill them? These people seem to be from the Black Zen sect. Li Gui said in a low voice. Ever since the incident with Li Changjiang, news of the Black Zen sect had spread throughout the Li family. Everyone had to be extra careful. If they found traces of the Black Zen sect, they had to be extra careful. Although he knew that the young master had his own plans, how could the young master not think of what he could think of? Hee, don't worry. They won't live past tonight. Let's continue on our way. After such a battle, they were all very excited. Since that was the case, they might as well set off directly to avoid wasting time on the road. Li Zongjio and the others were driving the carriage, so they were naturally slower. By the time Li Tianqing set out, he would be riding at full speed or in some other way. A distance of 4,000 miles was not a long distance. The four people from the Black Zen sect knelt here. They looked at Jin Yujun, whose 4 limbs were all cut off. At this moment, Jin Yujun could no longer speak. He could only open his mouth and whimper. To be honest, to be able to hold on until now without losing consciousness was already very impressive. Seeing the pain on Jin Yujun's face and the broken limbs in front of them, the impact made the 4 Black Zen sect members shudder in fear. The rumbling sound of carriage wheels came from afar. They looked at each other. They had been kneeling here for at least an hour. Those people must have had the leisure to hide behind them and spy on them. Coupled with the sound of the wheels turning, they must have left. They should have left, right? Even if they didn't leave, they should be somewhere far away. We just have to hurry and rush into the Blackwater Forest. That's right. As long as we enter the forest, we won't be afraid of anything. Let's split up first and regroup when it's safe? All right. The 4 of them whispered. Jin Yujun was still alive, but he was ready to die at any time. It didn't matter if Jin Yujun died. After all, he was the one who wanted to hurt the little fox. It had nothing to do with them. The most important thing was that they had to try their best to survive. Immediately, the 4 of them counted to 3 and abruptly dashed off in 4 different directions. However, the moment they stood up, they regretted it. They realized that they had nowhere to go. Around them, there were already over 100 starving Blackwater wolves staring at them in the darkness. At this moment, as soon as they moved, hundreds of Blackwater wolves suddenly rushed out from the darkness. This kind of momentum was like a tide. A devouring torrent from the darkness rushed towards them. Although these people from the Black Zen sect were fierce, everyone's strength was around the level of a first-grade Yuan master. However, after kneeling for so long, their bones were already weak. In addition, these Blackwater wolves were ferocious. In just a few minutes, they couldn't resist anymore. I hate it. I shouldn't have gotten up. The figures of the Blackwater wolves drowned these people. Hundreds of hungry wolves devoured the 5 corpses clean. There were still some skulls with bits of flesh left. They were left on the ground. Li Zongjio and the others, who were far away, heard the cries of the Blackwater wolves. Hearing this, Li Gui and the others felt their scalps go numb. At this moment, they hadn't gone far. In addition, after some identification, they guessed that these wolf howls came from the place just now. They didn't expect the young master to have such an ability to summon a pack of wolves. Could it be that the young master was the reincarnation of the king of the forest? In his heart, Li Gui had already labeled Li Zongjio with a few strange labels, but none of them were symbols of mysticism. The convoy continued to move forward slowly. Along the way, there were many times when they met some fellows who came to block their way. Li Zongjio also instructed to just give them money and send them away. If they could solve the problem with money, they would try their best not to use violence. That would waste too much energy. If they were covered in blood, they would have to take a bath and wash their clothes. In addition, the Li family was like the sun in the sky, and their wealth was rolling in. This money was not a problem at all. At the same time, with Li Gue and Gu Man, two great experts, these bandits did not dare to act recklessly. After receiving the money, they obediently left. The journey was more than 10 days, and it could be said that they were travel-worn. They were only 300 miles away from Guanxi town. In one more day, they would be able to arrive. Over the past few days, Li Zongjio had gained a lot of experience in this aspect of cultivation. The blood dragon origin spirit must have a yuan formula hidden in it. However, with Li Zongjio's current level, he was still unable to touch it. Therefore, Li Zongjio simply focused on studying these two aspects. It seems that after the situation here settles down, I have to go out and gain experience. There are still some things that I need to snatch. Li Zongjio thought in his heart. Although he might not be able to recall the memories of his previous life clearly. However, Li Zongjio still remembered some of the more important things. For Li Zongjio, the time and place of some heavenly treasures could be obtained in advance. It was also a good opportunity to try and see if he could enter the heavenly pill pavilion. He had to study it well. With Li Zongjio's previous life's experience, he speculated that there must be some hidden secret in the heavenly pill pavilion. Therefore, he had to find it. Li Zongjio had already reached other realms. He only needed time to restore his realm. However, that was Yao Yao's indefinite saint realm. Li Zongjio still had to try hard. If there were no challenges and pursuits in life, everything would become meaningless. Suddenly, Li Zongjio's carriage shook violently. With a boom, one of the wheels of the carriage was directly blown off. Bang! The carriage flipped over and fell to the ground. Even Gu Man, who was in charge of driving, fell to the ground. Enemy attack. Li Gue turned around and saw that the young master's carriage had been blown over. How could this be? Moreover, this should have been an ambush. There should have been a hidden bomb buried under the ground early on. To be able to get such a thing, one must not have an ordinary background. This was because only the dynasty had such a thing. If one used it privately, it would be against the law. Autumn wind of Mount Mang is here. Guys, kill them. Leave the women and their belongings behind. Don't let anyone else go. Chapter 129. Mang Mountain's Autumn Wind General. This name sounded a little funny. However, the people living near Guanxi town were extremely fearful of General Qiu Feng of Mount Mang. The road they were on was called Mang Mountain. And this Autumn Wind General. He was the self-proclaimed king of this generation. He was extremely cruel and merciless. His men were called the Autumn Wind Army. Wherever the Autumn Wind Army passed, not even a blade of grass would grow. This person by the name of Qiu Fengjiang, not only did he possess frightening strength, more importantly, he had connections with this person. It was said that he had connections with the guard mansion of Guanxi town. The guard mansion was the headquarters of the armed forces in this town. The firearms provided by some empires were also secretly provided to General Qiu Feng by the House of Guardians. This kind of underground trade had existed for a long time. Officials colluded with bandits. As a result, the people of Guanxi town were living in an abyss of suffering. Some caravans that were not strong enough, or if they were not prepared, would be severely injured by the autumn wind of Mount Mang and suffer heavy losses. Usually, those who knew the rules would prepare the women and jewelry in advance and send them over directly to inform them. Li Gue and the others obviously did not know the rules here. Therefore, the Autumn Wind Army was prepared to kill one to warn the others. Once in a while, a murder would let the people around know that the Autumn Wind Army's strength was not undeserved. If they had real strength, they had to make a name for themselves. Only then would people be afraid of them in the future. This was Autumn Wind General's idea. Li Zongjio came out of the carriage. The guards of the Li family also gathered together. A rain of arrows came from the enemy. The guards of the Li family immediately looked for cover to block the arrows. Arrows flew in the air. Gu Man let out a low roar and directly tore down a piece of wood from the broken carriage. Using it as a shield, he rushed towards the group of archers. Ding, ding, ding. The wooden board was shot like a hedgehog. Gu Man approached and suddenly threw out the wooden board in his hand. At the same time, his ferocious hand grabbed the nearest archer. Get out of my way! The archer was like a little chick as he was flung away. He smashed into a rock, causing a comminuted fracture. He could no longer get up. Gu Man, who had rushed into the group of archers, was like a wolf in a flock of sheep, showing off his invincible might. Even General Qiufeng's eyes lit up when he saw the valiant Gu Man in the distance. At such a time, the braver one was, the greater the chance of breaking out. The more one hid, the more miserable the outcome would be. It would be easier for them to be killed. This was an unchanging law. Therefore, one should never be afraid of death on the battlefield. Take that brat down. Qiufeng saw Li Zongjio, who had just poked his head out. This guy looked clean and was well protected by these guards. He must be an important person. This group of people didn't seem to be easy to deal with. Every one of them was well trained. Facing the enemy, they didn't panic at all. Obviously, they were experienced. This gave General Qiufeng a headache. However, now that he was an arrow that had left the bow, there was no way to take it back. No matter how stubborn he was, he had to take him down. Under General Qiufeng's command, 3 people immediately galloped forward. These 3 people held long spears and formed a triangular charging formation. From this, it could be seen that they were well-trained and very experienced experts. Li Gue quickly locked onto the 3 enemies that were charging at him. The other party quickly approached. Fire the crossbow, Li Gue ordered. Suddenly, a guard pushed out a crossbow from the group of people. This kind of crossbow was also a mechanical weapon. As long as you could make it, you could use it. Often in the process of battle, the ballista was a very destructive defensive weapon. A series of arrows were shot out. Out of the 3 horses, 2 of them were immediately shot down. The last person was already less than 20 meters away from Li Gue and the others. Li Gue was already holding a sharp sword in his hand. His figure rushed forward, ready to fight with this person. However, he saw that person's foot tapped, and his figure rose into the air, somersaulting several times in the air. The tip of the spear was pointed downwards. Like a poisonous dragon drilling, it slashed down towards Li Zongjio's head. Not good. Li Gue wanted to block this person. This person's move was extraordinary. The surrounding elemental energy surged with an extremely sharp aura. However, 2 waves of energy attacked from behind. The 2 people who had fallen off their horses just now had caught up. The Li family's guards were also exchanging blows with a large number of bandits. There were shouts and screams everywhere. Take my spear! Sky-piercing thunder spear! This was a 2nd-grade elemental skill. This person was also a 4th-grade elemental master. As for Li Zongjio's cultivation, when he was in Wuxue Pill sect, he was already a 6th-grade elemental master. A few days ago, he had also experienced a breakthrough. Now, he was an 8th-grade elemental master. When the other party's attack landed, although the surging lightning energy in the surroundings did indeed give people a sense of nervousness, it was still not enough. However, in front of Li Zongjio, it was just child's play. Young master, be careful! Li Gue roared. The eyes of the person who descended from the sky flashed with a cold light. Your young master is dead for sure. In the next moment, the elemental energy in his body surged wildly, exploding along the tip of the spear. Like a lightning snake, it blasted towards Li Zongjio. When the lightning appeared, the power of the sky-piercing thunder had already arrived in front of Li Zongjio. Boom! Li Zongjio's body suddenly exploded violently. Dust filled the air. Gravel filled with intense energy shot out. A figure directly spat out blood and flew backwards. Qiufengjiang, who was on a distant hillside, saw this scene and immediately widened his eyes. Qiufengjiang was wearing iron armor and a golden helmet. This attire, at the same time, showed that Qiu Fengjiang was a self-proclaimed general. What's going on? Qiu Fengjiang couldn't understand. Didn't his subordinate use his ultimate move to directly kill Li Zongjio? Why did he fly backwards and spit out blood? Just as Qiu Fengjiang continued to stare at his subordinate in front of him, he realized that his subordinate's figure was flying towards him in a strange way and trajectory. Boom! Not good, stop him. Qiu Fengjiang immediately roared, but it was too late. The subordinate directly crashed into Qiu Fengjiang, and a long spear pierced through his stomach. Qiu Fengjiang was knocked off his horse, and his stomach was directly pierced through by a long spear. General, what happened to you? General. Seeing this, the surrounding people immediately jumped off their horses and came to Qiu Fengjiang's side. However, Qiu Fengjiang was indifferent. This spear directly took away his life. His internal organs had already been shattered. Qiu Fengjiang fell off his horse. Everyone was shocked. At this moment, a young voice came from the battlefield below. Kill them all. Chapter 130. There were rules in Jianghu. If everyone abided by the rules, the situation would naturally calm down. However, there were often people who liked to break the rules and act recklessly with their self-righteous strength. Therefore, Li Zongjio didn't show any mercy to such people who didn't abide by the rules and didn't care about morality. He immediately killed Qiu Fengjiang. Even with Qiu Fengjiang's heavy armor and his strength as a 5th-grade Yuan master, he was unable to dodge the spear. In such a small place, such strength and military strength was enough to establish an entire family. However, these people just had to occupy this place and do such cruel and bloody things. Since Li Zongjio was here, he had to take care of these people. He was not chivalrous. Li Zongjio was not a very righteous person. For his own benefit, he could kill people. However, he was not a bad person. At the very least, Li Zongjio had his own principles. The name of Evil Lord was not fabricated out of thin air. With young Master Li Zongjio's order and the killing of the enemy's leader, the morale of this side was greatly boosted. Although there were only a dozen guards. Previously, these guards had been trained by old Master Gu Xuanwu. As a result, they were able to reach a state where they could cooperate with each other tacitly. At the same time, the most important thing was that they were not afraid of killing. Only real blood and the flames of war could make people grow. Therefore, Li Zongjio was quite satisfied with these guards. At the very least, they did not panic. Immediately, Li Gui led the guards to counterattack. On the other side, Gu Man was also fighting to his heart's content, restraining all the archers. Only someone like Gu Man could become an overlord in the future with such a ferocious aura. Li Zongjio thought in his heart. From the beginning, the foundation had been laid. Gu Man was not afraid of battle at all. Like a brave vanguard general, he rushed to the forefront of the battlefield and tore apart the enemy's formation. In the end, the Qiu Fengjiang army was completely defeated. After losing their backbone, these people ran away. They threw away their armor along the way. The guards of the Li family were covered in blood, and the swords in their hands were chipped like teeth. This was a true blood-soaked battle. More than 100 people were lying on the ground. With only a dozen or so people, they actually managed to kill their way out of the encirclement of nearly 300 people. At the same time, they also managed to defeat the more than 300 people. After leaving over 100 corpses behind, they immediately fled. On the other hand, although a few of the Li family's guards were heavily injured, their lives weren't in danger. Basically, everyone was injured. This was definitely a complete victory. When he returned from here, he could brag to his heart's content. Of course, Li Zongjio had also killed many people. Otherwise, there was no guarantee that some of these people would lose their lives. The seriously injured are lying on the carriages. The lightly injured continue to maintain the formation. We will leave this place first. Li Gui's back was also slashed 3 times. If it wasn't for Li Zongjio's intervention, the 2 masters would have chopped Li Gui into pieces long ago. The power of a Master Origin Realm cultivator was too strong. Although he was injured, Li Gui did not panic and did not fall down. That was how he calmly issued his orders. On this point, Even Li Zongjio nodded inwardly. These two carriages were directly damaged in the battle just now. The other carriage was even more miserable. It was directly shot into a hedgehog. "Young master, get on the horse," Li Gui said. He couldn't possibly let the young lord walk while he rode the horse. Therefore, Li Gui gave his horse to the young lord. This little fellow's performance just now was very good. This horse really followed its master. If Li Gui was panicking just now, then this horse would naturally be frightened and run around in all directions. But just now, the horse was standing there obediently and even helped Li Gui kick away an enemy. "No need. Let the injured brothers get on the horses," Li Zongjio said. After saying that, he walked forward by himself. Looking at the back of his young master, Li Gui's heart was filled with indescribable admiration. He was powerful, young and promising, and also very kind. Last time, the family's guards were killed. They directly killed their way into the other party's nest and heavily injured the people of Flying Cloud City's Su family. They killed several elders and even killed their family's head, making the Su family compensate. This also completely shocked the forces of Flying Cloud City. Therefore, the forces of Flying Cloud City did not dare to act recklessly. After all, they still had some influence. Clans that could surpass the Su clan might not be able to stop the Li clan's meta beast. After all, the Li clan's old ancestor was killed directly. The outcome was imaginable. The other party might have even more terrifying means. Otherwise, why would they be so arrogant? Even now, when the Li family's forces moved in, the City Lord's mansion of Flying Cloud City also made way for them. They did not dare to offend them directly. At the very least, before they truly understood the situation, they would not deliberately make things difficult for them. "Little Yun, get on the horse," Li Gui said. He pointed at a relatively young guard and asked him to get on the horse. A large piece of flesh was cut off from the guard's leg, but only a simple bandage was applied. It was impossible for him to walk. Little Cloud didn't even have the chance to refuse before she was carried onto the warhorse by two of her teammates. The group moved forward again. The carriage with the goods was not attacked. After all, these people would deliberately avoid these goods. Sometimes, people would transport some priceless antiques and fragile things. If there was any damage, the loss would be great. "You have to kill 10,000 people in order to master your fist technique," said Qin Wenian. Seeing Gu Man walk over, he opened his mouth and said, "What? Kill 10,000 people? Impossible, impossible. I'm not a homicidal maniac." Gu Man shook his head repeatedly. When Li Zongjio heard this, he smiled but did not say anything. 10,000 people. This guy would definitely be a great killing machine in the future. The people he killed would be more than 10,000. Because this battle had also delayed a little. Therefore, they just arrived at Guanxi town that night. Although Luoxia city was small, it was still a city. The city wall was 150 feet high. It could more or less defend against the enemy. However, in Guanxi town, the so-called city wall was just an earthen wall. Some parts of it had even fallen off. Li Zongjio's grandfather was a local rich man in this town. Although it was night, it was difficult to resist the smell of blood that permeated Li Zongjio and his men. After going through a bloody battle, they appeared to be in a sorry state on the surface. However, the eyes of these guards were as sharp as knives, warning others not to approach. Otherwise, they would be attacked. Therefore, one by one, they took a detour. "Stop, who are you?" An ignorant guard did not see the hint in his boss's eyes. He just habitually wanted to extort a sum of money. He directly walked out and stopped Li Zongjio and his men. Chapter 131. When this person walked out, the atmosphere at the scene became extremely strange. That person looked as if he had just woken up. When he looked carefully at the group of people in front of him, he realized that something was wrong. None of the people in front of him seemed easy to deal with. But now, he had already said those harsh words. If he wanted to take them back, it would be impossible. Moreover, it would be a very shameful thing. Cough cough. That we need to pay taxes to enter the pass. The soldier coughed a few times, and his tone softened a little. He looked at his companions. They seemed to be sitting on the ground, frightened by the other party's aura. How much? Li Gui walked out and said in a deep voice. He stared at the person in front of him. After seeing Li Gui's eyes, the soldier's heart trembled violently. In fact, these soldiers could only be considered as military ruffians. They were recruited on the spot by the local guard office. They did not even need to go through much training. They just put on the uniform and went to work directly. The people they recruited were local bullies and hooligans. They were best at bullying ordinary people. But when he saw Li Gui in front of him and the murderous eyes of these guards, he knew that this matter would not be resolved so easily. It was not easy to take money from these people in front of him. Everyone, 1 silver coin. He wanted to say 5 silver coins out of habit to extort a sum of money. But when the words came to his mouth, he immediately changed his words. He did not dare to say it again. If he said it out loud, it would be over. Ding. Li Gui tossed out a gold coin. This gold coin was equivalent to 100 silver coins. Keep the change. The soldier took the money and almost did not dare to believe his eyes. Just by opening his mouth, he was able to obtain a gold coin. When he was here, not only would he not be able to get his monthly salary, it would also be deducted. Even if he did get it, the price would not be so high. It was quite good to be able to save a gold coin in 3 months. The sudden happiness made the soldier unable to come back to his senses. Let me ask you, where is old Master Shin's home? Li Gui continued to ask. Old Master Shin? The soldier was stunned at first, then he tried to recall. Which old mansion? At the same time, he sized up Li Gui and the others. Master Shin Chuanqiu. What is your relationship with the Shin family? When the guard heard this, his expression immediately changed. At the same time, he became nervous. He deliberately raised his voice so that the people behind him could hear him and let his companions know what was going on here. The Shin family? When he heard these words, the guard captain behind him immediately stood up. The situation at the scene once again became strange. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder. The guard captain whispered a few words to the person beside him. The person beside him nodded and quickly ran away. Where are you from? What are you doing in Guanxi town? The captain of the guards pushed aside the guards in front of him and came in front of Li Gui. The guards behind him were also waiting solemnly. If it was in the past, the guards of the Li family might have been a little nervous. Everyone had their swords drawn and bows bent, confronting each other for a while. But now, these people only raised their eyelids and looked at these people with sneers. If their young master gave the order, it would only take 3 minutes for these people's heads to be taken away. Even though they had not made a move yet, they still felt uneasy when they saw the look in these people's eyes. What I'm asking is where old man Shin's house is. Li Gui said. After following Li Zongjiu for a long time, his attitude towards these things had changed. When he saw these people's actions, he knew that something was wrong. Not far away, a large group of people was rushing over. When the captain of the guards heard the commotion in front of him, he turned around to take a look and smiled in his heart. When he turned around, he suddenly realized that there was another figure in front of him. Fuck, you fucking... Before he could finish speaking, Li Zongjiu grabbed the guard captain's neck. Tell me, what happened to the Shin family? How dare you? The voice of the guard that Li Zongjiu was pointing at immediately became sharp. Take him down. Li Gui shouted. The Li family guards behind him who were only slightly injured immediately drew their swords and attacked. When they got close, they directly stabbed their thighs. The dozen guards in front of them were all taken down in the blink of an eye. Gu Man chased after a few of them who had escaped further away. He punched them one by one and sent them flying to the ground. They were definitely seriously injured. When such a tyrannical fist force was displayed, how many thin and weak bodies could withstand it? This was especially true for these good-for-nothings who only knew how to wear such clothes to scare people. The face of the guard captain, whose throat was gripped by Li Zongjiu, had already turned purple. He was forced to the point that he could not breathe. Li Zongjiu's 5 fingers exerted a little force and immediately broke the neck of the guard in front of him. The only guard who wasn't attacked was the one who had taken the money at the beginning. He stood in his original spot, and even the saber at his waist was only half drawn. He didn't dare to draw it out anymore. If he pulled it out, the situation would be dangerous. He could only watch helplessly as his captain of the guards died right in front of his eyes. He could not believe his eyes. No matter what, it was still the same. Wearing this uniform, he was also a member of the dynasty. Killing a soldier of the dynasty in the street like this, he would have to go to jail. How dare you kill a regular soldier of the dynasty in the street? I am the first military governor of Guanxi town, Ma Yuanshan. I am ordered to catch the murderer. Take him down. The person who came was full of confidence. He was actually a Yuan Qi master. His cultivation had already reached the level of a 5th grade Yuan master. Those who held important positions in this dynasty's organization had to have some real ability. Otherwise, even if the people below couldn't suppress them, the people above couldn't hide from them either. Therefore, to be able to hold the position of the first military governor, one must have some real ability. Ma Yuanshan waved his hand and immediately the people behind him swarmed forward. Li Zongjio and the others were heavily surrounded. Li Gui and the others were not clear about the situation, but it seemed that something had happened in old Master Shin's mansion. Li Zongjio's eyes were filled with killing intent. He looked at Ma Yuanshan. Ma Yuanshan had brought people to kill them aggressively. But he did not expect that the eyes of the young man in front of him were still as bright as the stars even in the dark night. His gaze was as if he could see through him. I will give you 3 breaths to tell me about the Shin family. Otherwise, I will take your head. Chapter 132. I want your head. It had been many years since he heard such arrogant words. Ma Yuanshan had already been in this area for so many years and he had already subdued all the gangsters and bandits in the surrounding mountains. Yet, this little brat in front of him actually dared to utter such ruthless words. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people behind him and that he was a veteran of hundreds of battles, he would probably be scared. She would probably be scared out of her wits. There are so many people who want my head. Why haven't I seen any of them yet? Come if you have the ability. I'll leave my head here. Ma Yuanshan laughed loudly. 3 breaths have passed. Li Zongjio's voice faded as he took a step forward. Suddenly, there was a fishy wind around him. Although Ma Yuanshan didn't care about it on the surface, he was already prepared in his heart. These people in front of him came from Luoxia City. He didn't know if the people of Luoxia City had heard some news, so they quickly came. Otherwise, how could he have arrived here so quickly? However, even if Ma Yuanshan was 120% alert, it was still difficult to resist Li Zongjio's move. However, Ma Yuanshan had already caught Li Zongjio's movement. When he saw Li Zongjio charging towards him, Ma Yuanshan immediately shouted in a low voice. You overestimate yourself. What could a kid do? Previously, Ma Yuanshan was worried that there might be some elders of the Li family hiding in the camp. These people were the ones he needed to pay attention to. Li Zongjio's figure flashed and appeared in front of Ma Yuanshan. His left hand clenched into a fist and pushed out. Suddenly, a power that resembled a rainbow piercing through the sun erupted. Boom! Although Ma Yuanshan saw Li Zongjio's movement, he found that he couldn't keep up with it. He could only watch as Li Zongjio's fist smashed towards his throat. Bang! Ma Yuanshan's feet didn't leave the ground. His body didn't move, but his neck suddenly sank. At the same time, a piece of scarlet flesh flew out from the back of his neck. The bones in his neck were directly broken by Li Zongjio's fist. He died in an instant. Without the connection of the spine, the neck naturally fell between the shoulders like an ornament. However, the most shocking thing was, Ma Yuanshan's flesh wasn't damaged at all. Ma Yuanshan's body showed a strange posture. Li Zongjio pulled out a short knife from Ma Yuanshan's waist. In front of the man in front of him, he directly cut off Ma Yuanshan's head, including his skin and flesh. When his head was chopped off, Ma Yuanshan's body fell to the ground with a loud thud. Fresh blood gushed out like a fountain. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The soldiers surrounding Li Zongjio didn't dare to come close. Ma Yuanshan was their leader and also their strongest expert. However, he was easily killed by Li Zongjio. What kind of monster was this young man? Next I'll give you 3 breaths. Li Zongjio pointed at a person. This person was a squadron leader. He had more than 10 people under him. Now that the first military governor was dead, it should be the deputy general to take control of the situation. However, Li Zongjio directly pointed at him. Suddenly, everyone's eyes turned to him. Immediately, the pressure on them became quite great. With the example of Ma Yuanshan, no one dared to be stubborn. If they didn't explain the situation clearly, they would probably end up like Ma Yuanshan. Regardless of whether the Guardian's residence would help them take revenge, at that time, they would. You can't even see it. Shen family has been sealed. Tomorrow, the Shen family will be executed. Now, they are imprisoned in the dungeon of the defender's residence. The squadron leader stuttered. When he spoke, he accidentally bit his tongue. He didn't dare to stop and directly said everything. Li Zongjio's eyes were suddenly filled with murderous intent. The squadron leader felt cold all over and his body couldn't help but tremble. Then he saw Li Zongjio's knife coming down. Crush. The squadron leader's body was directly split into 2. His internal organs fell to the ground and still jumped. Go to the defender's residence. Li Zongjio's body was full of murderous intent. These people were actually so audacious. Not only did they destroy the Shen family, but they also directly arrested all the people of the Shen family and prepared to execute them the next day. In his previous life, Li Zongjio only knew that his family was destroyed. His mother and father were also killed. Li Changjiang was the one who was responsible for all of this. But he didn't expect that the defender's residence dared to interfere. As for the reason, Li Zongjio didn't think it was necessary. No matter what the reason was, no one could hurt his family, his relatives. No one. The Li family's guard team suddenly became murderous. After such a thing happened, how could they let it go easily? Li Zongjio's mother was the wife of their family head. Although they all had the surname Li, they were family. Everyone blocked Li Zongjio's side and stared ahead. They were in a confrontation with the surrounding soldiers. In fact, there was a deputy general in this team. However, after seeing how ruthless Li Zongjio was and how even Ma Yuanshan was killed, the deputy general had already killed 3 people in a row. According to the law, Li Zongjio had committed a capital crime. But Li Zongjio's team was like a suicide squad. These people didn't dare to move at all. With such a murderous aura released, no one dared to provoke this iron-blooded team. Just like that, Li Zongjio and the others swaggered out of the encirclement of these people. These people didn't even dare to say anything. Watching the enemy leave was a very sullen feeling. Ahem, everyone, don't panic. Don't panic. Who knows where the defender is now? After Li Zongjio and the rest left, the deputy dared to stand up. He had been thinking about it all the time. When would Ma Yuanshan die so that he could be in charge of such a large number of guards? In the whole town, there were only so many guards. However, in this city, there would always be guards by the side of the Lord Guardian. These people were all experts. Only the Lord Guardian could deal with the people in front of him. As for the rest, whoever went up would die. There was no ambiguity. The defender seems to be in Willow Flower Alley, Bright Moon Hotel. Someone said, Willow Flower Alley, Bright Moon Hotel? When the deputy heard this, he immediately slapped his head. This was troublesome. Why did the defender go looking for fun at this time? But now that the fire was on his eyebrows, he didn't have time to think about it. He quickly ran over. He had to report the situation here. Chapter 133. The location of the defender's residence had always been easy to find. It was located in the most central area. No matter which city gate it was, as long as one entered the city and walked straight ahead, they would definitely be able to see the defender's residence. The defender's residence occupied an area of nearly 300 meters. Even the usual military training grounds were placed here. When the dynasty was first established, in order to establish its position and consolidate its position, it had already increased the power of these people and expanded the military force to form a deterrent. Whether it was the commoners or the forces of the underworld, they all feared the power of the dynasty. Even until now, these people had not been disarmed. Hence, this kind of drawback was gradually revealed. Some people even had their own military force, feigning compliance but opposing in secret, and even doing some extremely outrageous things. Using the dynasty's name, they did the dirty deeds of bandits. There were countless places like Guanxi Town under the dynasty. Hence, even the defender's residence was quite domineering. It could also be said that it was quite free. It had the power and manpower in its hands. Whoever it wanted dead would die. Just like the Shen family. The Shen family was powerful, right? Wasn't the Shen family very powerful? The Shen family had been rich for several generations. This old man, Shen Chuanqiu, had made his fortune by relying on animal skins and became the fur king of Guanxi Town. After being rich for so long, he still did not know how to pay more money. The defenders' residents could not stand by and watch, so they secretly took action. Later on, this matter became more and more serious. This caused the defender's hair to stand on end, and he ordered the Shen family to be wiped out. Now, in the dungeon of the defender's residence, the main figures of the Shen family were all imprisoned here. Facing the situation in front of him, Shen Chuanqiu's chi sank into his dantian as he sat in the cell. Beside him, a beautiful woman with long hair tied in a ponytail was half kneeling, taking care of the old man. "Father, don't worry. I have already sent someone to inform Tianqing." This beautiful woman was Li Zongjiu's mother, Shen Xinxiao. Her clothes were not bad, but she did not lose her elegance. There was always a calm aura around her. As she spoke, Shen Xinxiao also looked at the few people imprisoned in the opposite cell. The two people imprisoned in the opposite cell were Shen Xinxiao's two elder brothers. After exchanging glances with each other, they were secretly certain. There was no news of the person who went out to ask for help. He was most likely crippled. Therefore, if they wanted to survive, there was only one way, which was to kill their way out. Killing their way out also required time. However, Shen Chuanqiu was stubborn. The House of Guardians accused Shen Chuanqiu of evading taxes and killing some rare beasts. They said the beasts were raised in Guanxi Town by the dynasty. When did a few wild boars become national treasures? These people kept talking about the dynasty's laws. The old man was furious. He was a law-abiding citizen, so he proudly puffed out his chest and raised his head, declaring that he was innocent. In the end, he was still arrested and thrown into jail. He wanted to use this attitude to prove his innocence. His children followed him in one by one. Their old father had been taken away. Could it be that he was still sleeping at home? In short, Shen Chuanqiu was starting to regret his decision. His grandfather had been righteous all his life. If he said he didn't do it, then he didn't do it. He could even use his own blood to prove his innocence. He could die, but his children didn't have to die with him. However, what was done could not be undone. There was no chance for him to turn things around. The most infuriating thing was that Shen Chuanqiu only found out after he was sent to jail. It turned out that the other family in Guanxi Town, the Tang family, had colluded with the House of Guardians to destroy the Shen family's foundation. They had stolen the Shen family's assets. Old Master Shen, who knew everything, was filled with regret. He didn't expect that he would be harmed by despicable people. At that time, he almost didn't. His entire person directly passed over just like that. Fortunately, Shen Xinxiao stabilized the old man's condition. Since these people wanted to cut the Gordian knot and play tricks behind the scenes, the Shen family couldn't just sit and wait for death. After all, Shen Xinxiao had seen the world. Now, he was ready to kill his way out. In the middle of the night, he would find an excuse and lead the Shen family out. They would return to Luoxia City first. Most importantly, they had to capture the guardian, Jiangcang. Otherwise, the Shen family, which had 40 to 50 people of all ages, wouldn't live to see the next day. It was a very risky thing to do. However, if he didn't take the risk, he wouldn't have any other opportunities. In fact, the family line might even be cut off. Tonight would definitely be a night of bloody battle. Fuck these bastards. When I get out, I'll kill all of you. Shen Xinxiao wasn't a weak woman. How could a woman who could pick up a rolling pin and chase people around be an ordinary person? This is a disaster for the Shen family. I didn't expect that the Shen family, which had been prosperous for generations, would encounter such a disaster in my hands. Thinking of this, old Master Shen Chuanxiu couldn't help but cough. The thought of it made him angry. His emotions were so agitated that the injuries he had gotten from hunting in the mountains in his early years flared up again. Every member of the Shen family was a natural hunter. Now they were like tigers trapped in a cage. Evil people are in charge. I, Shen Xinxiao, will not let these people off even if I become a ghost. Shen Xinxiao said sternly. Her eyes were filled with a manly spirit. At the same time, she was extremely angry about this matter. Hee, old Master Shen, is the food in the dungeon safe? Just as the members of the Shen family were feeling melancholy, a provocative and playful voice rang out. The sound of gold and jewels colliding could be heard. A fat man, who was wearing gold and silver, walked in under the protection of a few guards in black. The man was holding 3 walnuts in his hand. He was twirling them in his hand. When he saw the pitiful appearance of a little bird that had stubbornly survived in the ruins, it was easy for him to make a move. Most importantly, when the fat man saw Shen Xinxiao's beautiful figure, he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He had been attracted to Shen Xinxiao since he was young. However, he had been robbed of his love by a kid who had come out of nowhere. In the past, the Shen family and the Tang family were evenly matched. Hence, Shen Xinxiao could ignore him completely. However, things were different now. Shen Xinxiao was already a prisoner. His life and death were at the mercy of others. If he didn't take advantage of this opportunity to have some fun, it would be a waste. Tang Yuan, what are you doing here? Shen Chuanxiu shouted when he saw the fat man. Although my Shen family has been harmed by evil people, it is not something that a mere Tang Yuan can insult. Since your Tang family is so despicable, my Shen family will not let you off. Tang Yuan laughed loudly when she heard this. Old Master Shen? Do you still think that you are the richest man in Guanxi Town? Haha, your Shen family's territory has been taken over by my Tang family. Even if you get out of here alive, you will have nothing left. Now, Shen Xinxiao, you have a chance tonight. I can take a huge risk and help you avoid the death penalty. What do you think? Your Shen family has reached the end. Only I can save you now. Other than me, who else can come and go as they please? This is the death penalty prison of the House of Guardians. Ha! Tang Yuan laughed loudly. Just as her laughter reached its peak, a loud bang rang out. With a loud bang, the door to the dungeon was violently smashed apart. Countless wood chips flew out, interrupting Tang Yuan's laughter. Chapter 134. Who's there? The sudden explosion made it hard for anyone to react. The one who reacted the fastest was the head of the prison. This head of the prison had been in this line of work for 20 years. Under the deterrence of the dynasty's laws, he had been safe and sound for so many years. He had never encountered such a situation where someone forced their way in and ransacked the dungeon. He did not expect to encounter it today. Even when it happened in front of him, he still could not react. He did not know what was going on in front of him. The entrance was filled with dust. The head of the prison shouted, "Get out!" Suddenly, a sharp arrow pierced through the dust cloud. Shio! The sharp arrow immediately pierced through the prison head's heart. The powerful force nailed the prison head's body to the wall. Prison head! When the guards saw this scene, they immediately cried out in alarm. The strongest jailer had been killed just like that, and they immediately panicked. Before the dust had even settled, a figure could be seen walking out of the dust cloud. The figure took a few steps and arrived in front of the prison cell. "Hey you!" The prison guard wanted to stop Li Zongjio, but he saw a group of people rushing in. Their long swords fell and cut these people in half. Blood splattered everywhere. When this person was cut in half, Li Gui's eyes did not waver at all. There was only an unchanging determination. Hey, what's going on? Where did this kid come from? How dare he break into the prison? How dare he offend the laws of the Xingyan dynasty? Tang Yuan saw Li Zongjio walking down the stairs. At first glance, he was just a child. What was there to be afraid of? You guys go and capture this kid. Send him to the Lord Guardian. Such a huge commotion naturally attracted the attention of the Shen family. When Shen Xinxiao saw the young man walking down, he was pleasantly surprised at first. However, when he took a closer look, he found it hard to believe. However, Shen Xinxiao quickly confirmed that this was his son. Zongjio? Li Zongjio walked down with a murderous aura. Originally, he was prepared to go on a killing spree. These unruly people who had a close relationship with him actually dared to lay their hands on the close relatives of the evil lord, Li Zongjio, and even threw his mother into the dungeon. Such arrogant behavior had thoroughly enraged Li Zongjio. When Li Zongjio found out about this, no one in the defender's residence would survive. However, when he heard his mother calling out to him, the murderous aura on Li Zongjio's body instantly vanished. This long-awaited call had been heard for a full 3,000 years. Now he had heard of it again. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. The child wants to raise, but the parents are no longer around. This was probably the greatest pain and regret in the mortal world. In his previous life, even though Li Zongjio had become the unparalleled evil lord and enjoyed the respect of the world, Li Zongjio had never been happy. He had never felt truly happy. Even his heart had long turned to stone. After 3,000 years, he had returned to his youth. Such an unbelievable thing had happened to him. It also made Li Zongjio feel like he was in a dream. "Mother," Li Zongjio shouted. This word had been sealed in Li Zongjio's mouth for more than 3,000 years. To Li Zongjio, this touching sound was something that he would never forget. Since he was reborn, he had to grasp everything in front of him. Who is it? Shen Chuanxiu could not react. Xinxiao's son? Father, this is Zongjio, Li Zongjio. Shen Xinxiao was a little emotional. He thought that before he died, he would not be able to see the person he loved and his child. He did not care about Li Tianqing. They had seen each other for so long, but not being able to see his son was the greatest pain and regret in Shen Xinxiao's heart. As a mother, this pain would be so deep. However, Shen Xinxiao did not show it. Just now, he was silently praying in his heart that he would be able to see Li Zongjio again. Could it be that the heavens had spoken directly? Li Zongjio? Oh, it's my silly grandson from Luoxia City. Shen Chuanxiu remembered and quickly said. If Shen Xinxiao's IQ was online at this time, he would definitely talk back. However, Shen Chuanxiu's words were pardonable. Shen Chuanxiu actually liked this little grandson very much. However, because of an incident, he became this silly grandson. Li Zongjio's incident was well known in the entire Luoxia city. The incident where he used the poison as an elixir. In the end, the victim was Shen Chuanxiu. That was why Shen Chuanxiu came up with this idea. However, Shen Chuanxiu did not blame Li Zongjio. On the contrary, he was very fond of this bold grandson of his. It was supposed to be a very warm reunion scene, but now, it was blocked by the iron fence. Therefore, the moment Li Zongjio saw it, his anger rose directly. So it's that bastard from Luoxia City. Sister Shen, you are so self-deprecating, it makes me very sad. Look at this kid, he looks like a bull's head and a horse's face. It's really ugly. Tang Yuan said repeatedly. She was extremely sarcastic towards Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio did not pay attention to Tang Yuan. Instead, he went directly to the fence and punched. With a loud bang, the fence in front of him was shattered. This domineering power was obvious at a glance. Even Tang Yuan's sarcastic words could not help but stop at this moment. Mother, grandfather, you have suffered. Li Zongjio felt extremely sorry in his heart. If he had come earlier, he wouldn't have had to suffer so much. What guardian residence? If he dared to take a step into the Shen family, he would break his arms and legs. He would enter vertically and leave horizontally. Mother, it's okay. Quick, let your men take grandfather and leave first. The battle outside ended very quickly. Li Gui and the others were also covered in blood. They directly ignored Tang Yuan and the others and released all the members of the Shen family. Don't worry. Today, with me here, no one can hurt the Shen family, Li Zongjio said. Just as these words were spoken, a wave of laughter that sounded like pigs being slaughtered erupted from outside. Ah, this is too funny. Shen Xinxiao, your son is not only an ugly monster, but also a retard. No one can hurt the Shen family. Ugly child, please go out and find out what the Shen family situation is now. They have already been sentenced to death by the dynasty's laws. Tang Yuan laughed loudly. Although the Shen family members were released, no one dared to touch Tang Yuan. This was because the 4 people beside Tang Yuan were also very famous. They had once worked together to kill a great bandit hiding in Guanxi town and became famous after that battle. Although the Shens were all experienced hunters, they were still far from enough to deal with these experts who could hunt down and kill bandits. After all, they were just ordinary hunters. The only ones who had some standard and some yuanqi were Shen Xinxiao and Shen Xinxiao's elder brother, Shen Nanxiao. One had to admit that this name was given quite casually. When Tang Yuan said such insulting words to Li Zongjio, Li Gui was already prepared to make a move. Only Li Gui and 3 guards were sent into the dungeon. The rest of the people were stationed at the periphery to attract the enemy's firepower. The 4 black-clothed men immediately took a step forward and shielded Tang Yuan behind them. They were in a confrontation with Li Gui and the others. Li Gui and the others did not make a move. Shen Xinxiao wanted to curse back, but he was stopped by Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio turned around and walked towards Tang Yuan. Everyone looked at Li Zongjio's actions. Do you know what it means to live a life worse than death? Li Zongjio looked at Tang Yuan. He said very seriously, "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."